Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to a resumption of the racing in the Sim Racing magazine GT4 Challenge Season 7 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing and proudly sponsored by none other than Oris Digital. That's right, we are into 2026. A happy new year to you all if we're still permitted to say a happy new year given the fact we are 6 days into 2026, but we're going to say it anyway as we return to the racing and after an extensive Christmas break of 3 weeks and an incredible race before it at Motorsport Arena Oschersleben, we've returned for round number 7, and with it our running to our conclusion with only 2 rounds remaining. First up on the stops is none other than the Red Bull Ring in Austria, a circuit which has gone through many a name change over its extensive history, and argue you could say it's had one of the most tumultuous histories of any European circuit. But one thing that's withstood the test of time is the Austrians' circuit ability to be able to stay alive in the face of adversity, and that's why it's still here today under the sponsorship of Red Bull, the energy and sports provider. But as our drivers get themselves set and ready to go roaring today, well, I'll tell you one thing, they're going to be full of energy, but this is also going to be a deciphering round of who's had a little bit too much to enjoy at Christmas versus those who've been able to keep slim and trim and are ready to go racing once again. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you to this live broadcast from Circuit Side as you tune in today via broadcast brought to you on YouTube at Paul Walsh Productions, and in the content booth you have myself. My name is Paul Walsh as I bring you all your racing action as it unfolds, and indeed we've got plenty to look forward to. In terms of our schedule, times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinate Time, UTC. And as we can see, in approximately what will be 14 minutes' time, we're seeing all drivers make the way onto the circuit for a 15-minute qualifying session. That's at 8 o'clock this evening, and who will come out the top? Who will find pole position at a circuit that is full of contrast and where slipstream can be just as much a benefit as it can be an adversary? We'll have to wait and see. But after that, we'll make our way straight to the grid for our 7th race of the season. It'll be our regular 60-minute race, albeit that'll be at 8:15 this evening, and all the drivers will be going for gold, there's no doubt about it. But given it's been 3 weeks since we last went racing, how about we bring you back up to speed with the story so far? Because we are 75% of the way through the season. There's been plenty of story along the way to this point, and we need to make sure that you're up to speed with the story as we are here in the Conte booth. So without further ado, let's give you that recap. We begin then by taking a look back at the calendar. And as we can see, we are into the final quarter. It's the 6th of January 2026 today. And after this round, we'll be making our way to the United Kingdom for the second of 2 visits to the UK, albeit that's where we'll be bringing the curtain down, not just on our visits to the UK, but also the season as a whole at the Alton Park International Circuit. Round 8 of 8 then is around the corner on the 20th of January, but last time out, we completed our German doubleheader, which began at the beginning of December at the Nürburgring Grosser Preisstrecke, or the Grand Prix Strecke, as more translated into English. However, after that, we then made our way to the Motorsport Arena Oschersleben, a circuit perhaps lesser favoured in the international spectrum, but a regular host of racing through series such as DTM and also more domestic series in Germany. And what a round of racing it was. And in the end, it was full of surprises, to the point, perhaps the biggest surprise of them all was championship leader overalls Alex Gall having a difficult day. After leading for so long, it was after his first pit stop he encountered a sudden technical issue with his car and he had to be taken back to the pits. And in his disagreement with his car, in the end there was only one driver who could step up to the top step and make himself a 2-time winner, and it was Stuart Reynolds who made it 2 wins in a row. And the big question today will be, can he make it 3 in a row? Because even in the absence of Alex Gall in that race on the lead lap, we did see Matias Penttilä keep Reynolds honest every step of the way. And indeed, what a round it was, because we also got to see the first one-stop strategies play out there, but more on that in a little while and why we may not see them again this season. As for in the AM class, we saw John Bailiff finally net his 3rd win of the season. Indeed, he's come close on 5 occasions this season to a win, but his conversion rate up to that point had only been effectively sub 50%. But he finally made it happen at the 6th time of trying with that 3rd win of the season, and it means that perhaps he's now taken control of the championship charge. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the AM class, 2nd and 3rd, as we'll come to the point shortly to demonstrate, it is anybody's guess who is going to be competing for the runner-up spot, because we have 4 drivers eligible for 2nd place, and that's without considering the fact that John Bailiff is not out of the woods yet. He's just now taken himself to a position whereby he does have a bit of an advantage, as we'll show you. But that's why this round at the Red Bull Ring, as we return to the racing, is definitely going to be one full of intrigue as our drivers try to get themselves back up to speed. So with a recap of where we've been racing, let's now take a look at those standings that we keep talking about. We begin with the overall Drivers' Championship, and after 6 rounds, it is Alex Gall who leads. The chicane and apex misses driver has seen his advantage reduced to 9 points. Now, he does have favourable points to his name, and therefore and that's why his lead has not been cut as much. However, given the way drop scores work out, we now know, and indeed Alex Gall will know, that he cannot afford any more slip-ups from this point onwards, because his drop score has essentially been consigned to the round at Oschersleben, and any more major drops in points, and suddenly all of his rivals will be able to pick up the pace, so long as they do not drop any points either. So that's why it's going to be a challenging round going forward for Alex Gall, because he really does have the pressure that he didn't need to have on him. Stuart Reynolds sits in second then on 110 points, and theoretically he is the main and only rival to go now for the title rights, although you could say that Matias Penttilä and Niels Kor are both mathematically in contention, with the RD Simsport driver on 95 points, 5 clear of Niels Kor, the satellite racing driver. However, they require both Reynolds and Gall to have difficulties over the next 2 rounds to really bring their chances to life, and they'll need those difficulties to happen here today at the Red Bull Ring in order to really bring that to life going into our season finale. But, as we like to say in motorsport, anything can happen, and it normally does, so don't rule them out as of yet. Taylor Adams sits in 5th for Agenta Sim Racing, and he was one of 2 drivers who demonstrated the potency of the one-stop strategy at Motorsport Arena Oschersleben last time out, leapfrogging his way up the order. It definitely was an impressive run from him, and well, by making that happen, we got to see what was quite an intriguing situation, whereby the one-stop in the end relied on a huge amount of fuel saving and running quite significantly off the pace, but somehow they made it work. And as a result of Taylor Adams doing it, but also behind him there was another driver who managed to pull it off as well, and it was Simon Povey. He leapt all the way from 11th to 5th in that race, but where's he leapt himself into the standings? Well, he's all the way down to 14th for F-Tech Racing, but some key points have moved him there. So between Adams and Povey, we then have in 6th place Ben Idris Abdullahi for Satellite Racing. He's only 2 ahead of Guy Edwards, of the 2 continue to chase down the top 5, but also battle with each other. And then we do have a 24-point gap to the second member of Agenta Sim Racing of Matt Slade. Then John Bailiff, your leading AM driver in the overall standing, sits in 9th for Win It or Bin It Racing. Only a point ahead of Chris Jennings, because do keep in mind the points here for the AM drives are based on their overall finishing positions, not their class finishing positions, and that's why you're seeing Bailiff so closely compacted with both Chris Jennings and Dennis Van Beelen, with Jennings and Van Beelen equal points, but Jennings ahead currently based on result countback for a higher overall finish in a race this season compared to Van Beelen. Behind the Axis Sin Sports and Chicane and Apex business drives who complete your top 10, it's then Rob Sharp, who's effectively best of the rest in 12th place there for Aburis Racing, only 3 points behind, 4 ahead of Jake Cranstone, and it's Simon Povey and Ollie Carwadine who complete your top 15. The Urus Racing yellow driver then holds what is a 5-point advantage over both SRM Yellow's Daniel Parron-Smith and Dries van Langendonk, with Dominic Brennan, John Roberts and Gary Toole completing your top 20. Outside the top 20, Heinz Matt and Kenzo Craigie both share 20 points, with Lee Berridge and Bart Johnson 2 and 3 points behind respectively. It's then Ryan Penny a further point behind in 25th, ahead of the pair of Duncan Wright and Eric Manning-Veld, who are 26th, with Daniel Kelleher, Kim Such and Callum Brandt completing your top 30. And outside the top 30, let's not forget about them, with points to the name firstly, Matthias Tem, Paul Goffett and Gilles Gardner, and then yet score any points in the overall championship, Andy Marsden, Ben Altrier, Colin Wynn, Edward May, Martin Kenyon, Stephen Burns and Mark Kent. And then as for the AM driver standings, where exactly do those sit? When we take our AM class, new to the grid this season, of course, introduced to keep the competition flowing. But as we can see, when all the points and positions are redistributed based on the AM class finishing positions by themselves, John Bailiff leads by an advantage that is growing. It may only seem slender at 9 points. However, the significance of that 9-point advantage is the fact that when you consider the drop scores, Bailiff right now does have multiple wins to his name and podium finishes. Something that other drivers perhaps do not have is the level of consistency in the high scores. Chris Jennings sits in second for Axis Sport behind, only a point ahead of Dennis Van Beelen for Chicane and Apex Missers. And the intrigue now is, what's more important to Jennings and Van Beelen? Is it the fight for second, or is it the fight for the championship crown? You would normally say it's the latter. However, when they find themselves out on circuit, should they not be able to pull one over Bailiff, it might become the former instead. And that's what Rob Sharp wants to get into as well, 96 points for Aburis Racing, given his run of podiums continues unabated, as does his run of top 5s. Ollie Carwadine sits in 5th for Oris Racing Yellow. He leads the rest of the Anfield then on 76 points, 6 ahead of John Roberts for Boosted Motorsport, and it's a further point to Heinz Mayer. Lee Berridge is 8th ahead of Mark Johnson, with the Boosted Motorsport driver having a difficult day at the office last time out at Oschersleben, and you could say that Boosted Motorsport had their worst day in the office at Oschersleben, with both of their Ford Mustangs struggling to keep it on the track over the race distance, not because their driving was poor, but because the circuit and the car just did not gel together. And Lee Berridge has fallen more haphazardly towards Mark Johnson, with the Track Mouse Racing driver only in turn 4 points ahead of Kim Such. The RS Racing Red driver is ahead of his teammate Ryan Penny by a single point, and that means Penny is best of the rest, ahead of Duncan Mariah, with Gary Toole, Paul Goffin and Eric Mannenveld completing your top 15, and Eric Mannenveld being the only other driver beyond both Bailiff and Van Beelen to take a win this season in the AM class, with Bailiff having 3, Van Beelen having 2, and of course Eric Mannenveld having that infamous win at Donington Park, 1 to his name, and behind him it's Andy Marsden ahead of Giles Gardner, with Martin Kenyon and Mark Kent with points to their names, and yet score any points, Colin Wynne and Stephen Burns. So that's the Drivers' Championship standings. Then we come to the Teams' Championship standing. And here we can see in the teams, it's a point that separates the two teams. However, in a first of some time, Chicane and Apex Missers are not leading the way anymore. They are a point behind Satellite Racing, but indeed, the difficulties for Alex Gall last time out have hurt Chicane and Apex Missers when they could have pulled away, and Satellite Racing have taken the initiative. Regenta Sim Racing are within touching distance of the top two still on 132 points, but their focus may be to hold off the rest of their charge, with Fury Sim Sport on 119, 12 ahead of RD Sim Sport, and it's a sizable gap, or the best part there, of 46 points to Win It or Bin It Racing, who really lead the hunt for the remainder of the places. F-Tech Racing sits 7th, 3 points behind them, but 6 ahead of SRM Yellow, and RS Racing Yellow and Axis Sim Sports complete your top 10. 4 points behind, it's Boosted Motorsport in 11th, ahead of Masters of Talk, and then SRM, RS Racing Red, and SRM Black complete those with points to their name, and in 16th place, yet to score any points, Full Tilt B Motorsport. So that's a recap of all the standings coming into this round. But before we really get into the present, we need to take one quick step back into the past and talk about our prizes from round number 6 and our medal winners. A huge congratulations to them. Firstly, the winner's medal for the overall race win at Motorsport Arena Oschersleben goes to Stuart Reynolds, making it now 2 wins in a row, 2 wins the whole of the season. Can he make it 3 today and pick up another medal? We'll have to wait and see. In the AM class, taking his 3rd winner's medal at long last, it's none other than John Bailiff. Congratulations to him. As for your safest driver award, that goes to Guy Edwards, with an incredibly low instant point count at what was the Motorsport Arena Oschersleben. A brilliant effort from Guy. And then as for your move of the race award, a big congratulations there to Mark Johnson, who took that home. But rather than wax lyrical about it, let's show it live on air, ladies and gentlemen, and you are going to love this one, we promise you that. So here is the move of the round in round number 6. This was Johnson chasing at the time after Lee Berridge. But as they made their way out of turn number 2, what you're going to see here is a sweeping left-hander coming up. So Johnson initially looks to the inside. Berridge covers him off. Johnson goes back to the white. But then channeling his inner Nigel Mansell, he dived to the inside with a dummy. And that's exactly how Mark Johnson got the job done there for what was the move of the round in round number 6. A brilliant feint there for Mark Johnson. You absolutely love to see it. And we look forward to seeing plenty more candidates to move of the race as of today here at the Red Bull Ring. So without further ado, let's come back to the present and let's introduce our host circuit for this round. It is the Grand Prix layout of the Red Bull Ring, located near the Styrian region town of Spielberg in Austria. 10 corners at its core, and a big thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but also their fantastic track maps that come with it. These 10 corners can be split into 2 equal halves. The first half of the lap is all about straight line speed and pace and heavy braking. That's the run at Niki Lauda Bend at turn number 1, all the way out towards what is AMS AG at turn number 3. Turn number 2 there, if you're wondering why it's labelled as a corner, because it's always room for a motorsporting household debate, and it does lead to proverbial debatable violence over the dinner table. Turn number 2 there is labelled such because that is where the MotoGP chicane would be if we were racing on it, but we're not, as we're racing at the Grand Prix layout instead. But as our drivers make the way to the highest point on the circuit at turn number 3, they'll then charge downhill on the long stretch all the way towards Rauch Corner at turn number 4, at which point the circuit takes a very different complexion. Suddenly the circuit becomes more about medium speed apexes. However, there's a recurring theme. Most of the corners from this point onwards are all off-camber, which means that understeer is much of a threat as oversteer as you make your way from corner start to corner exit. And indeed, this 2.68 mile course suddenly changes tact. They find that most through the kink of 5 up towards Power Horse at turn number 6. And as they come downhill through the long left-hander, it's another left-hander at turn number 7 when they switch back to the flat of turn number 8 before roaring their way out towards Jochen Rinckkorner, the home hero of Austria there in motorsport. And as they come downhill for the very tricky corner that normally leads to a lot of track limit violations, they'll then head into A1 green corner at turn number 10 to complete the lap and do it all over again. A quick recap of the rules before we do go racing as well. In terms of setup, our drivers are running the iRacing Sprint fixed setup with fuel loads restricted to 37%. Qualifying wise, we'll see an open qualifying format be used, which means all drivers are out of the circuit together for the 15 minutes. And as for the race, it shall commence via a double foul rolling start, as is the tradition of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge Series. There being no mandatory pit stop requirements, our drivers just need to get to the end of the race, coming into the pits when they need to do so. But if they do need to come into the pits, they can use a fast repair. They have one available, or they may have to be coming into the pits because they picked up a drive-through penalty. That'll be for 18 or more instant points. Should they get to 25, they will be disqualified, and we don't want to see that. Meanwhile, all race shooting shall be conducted post-race. So that's all the rules, a regulation, a recap of how we've got here. But let's come back to our circuit and see how our drivers are getting on in this practice warm-up session. And with only the best part of 15 seconds to go, indeed, we timed this perfectly to go from practice into qualifying. It does look as though Stuart Reynolds right now is pushing hard. However, Matias Penttilä, his main rival in terms of pace all season long, has just been able to out-edge him as Alex Gull is the fastest of everybody. And well, that is practice complete, ladies and gentlemen. John Bailiff taking the fastest lap in the AM practice times. It's now time to make our way then into the qualifying session and see who puts it on pole. So the drivers make their way out onto the circuit then. The clock strikes with 15 minutes counted down as quickly as that. Who's going to be on pole? Let's find out. Taylor Adams, the defending champion. Well, he won't be able to regain his title now, given the fact it's mathematically impossible for him to do so, or at that point where it will be very soon. And as he makes his way out of the pit lane, he roars his way up towards turn number 3. He's going to need to do so quickly, as he does have his teammate right behind him there of Matt Slate for Agenta Sim Racing. However, this is where the intrigue immediately comes into qualifying. Now, why would we say that? Well, keep in mind, as we mentioned earlier, this circuit is one of two halves. The first half is all about extended straights and acceleration zones, followed up by heavy braking zones. The latter half of the lap, meanwhile, is all about handling and medium speed bends. So the idea is, if you've got a teammate or someone you work with typically, what you'll want to do around here is essentially tuck into the draft with your teammate for the opening half of the lap, and that can gain you the best part of 3 to 4 tenths a second. And then your teammate, if they're willing to sacrifice a lap, will back off coming out of turn number 3, i.e. they'll take you all the way out to turn number 4 and then back off before the braking zone there, and they'll let you do the rest of the lap without the dirty air of their car in front. And in doing so, then you can take your natural racing line and you can actually gain some time. If you're feeling daring, you can of course follow them through what is the remainder of the lap, but that's where the dirty air and the element of understeer creeps into these GT4 machines, and that's why it may be a little bit of a split situation whereby having the slipstream for the first half of the lap is ideal, but the second half of the lap it may not be ideal, and instead it actually comes back to hurt you a little bit. That's what our drivers will need to negotiate here today. They'll need to think keenly about how best to set themselves up, or do they just do it in clear air as well? But also you'll notice here everyone is very eager to make the way around, as Dennis Van Beelen immediately tips his way to the pit lane. I think he doesn't want to be in the processional order here, all 30, so it's gone wrong, as meanwhile Matias Penttilä got it wrong coming out the final quarter. That's a big spin coming out of A1 ring bend. That's not uncommon, to be fair, and indeed right now I think he'll be kicking himself for that one, but somebody's got it wrong, and we'll have to wait and see if anybody else gets it wrong out there, because it's an easy corner on cold tyres in particular. Just to light the rear up, I think that rear left tyre, and suddenly the car goes spinning on around. Now, if you are tuning in tonight, don't be shy. Feel free to say hi in the YouTube chat and let us know who you're cheering on, and also how you're doing. Have you had a good Christmas and a good start to your 2026? If not, don't be afraid, because we're here to turn that frown upside down and into an absolutely ecstatic smile. Indeed, there's nothing quite like a good old bit of classic GT4 racing action on a Tuesday evening at Sim Racing Magazine, and we're here to make sure you get to enjoy every moment to the best of our ability. But as we do have Bailiff making his way up the hill, well, currently your AM Championship leader looking to take the maiden AM title, of course, with it being a new championship for this season. He's very much on course to do so, but he definitely will have the test against him, with the likes of Chris Jennings trying to make sure he doesn't get an easy ride. Now, in terms of the cars that might be strong here, It's another interesting question because the fact that the circuit is split into 2 equal halves, you really do want a car that's quite balanced in terms of its performance. As we do see there, Rob Sharp making his way along, and well, he's a little bit further down the road. Meanwhile, we did also see Andy Marsden there behind him, so they're coming together very gradually. Paul Goffin, meanwhile, was the driver we were also looking for, and the SRM Black driver found himself in a little bit of a traffic consultation with 2 of our Ford Mustangs there, and I believe that's why the satellite racing machines and behind one of the other cars as well. But definitely proving to be a bit intriguing as all drivers come towards the end of their first fine laps, and let's see what time starts coming in. Nils Gore then sets the benchmark initially at a 37.764 with Edwards the best part of 1.5 tenths behind. Jake Cranstone in the Porsche Cayman there goes 9,000 slower than him up into second. Heinz Mayer is currently the fastest of your AM drivers at 38.262. Very impressive lap there from the Heinz Mayer, and indeed Gary Toole will be looking at him thinking, okay, how's he managed to find a whole 10th on me? Is it because it's the BMW M4 Evo, perhaps? Well, this is where the element of the car comes together, because on the first half lap, you can imagine the likes of the BMW, the Mercedes and the Ford Mustang, they're going to be very strong cars because they've got the power, they've got the accelerational capabilities. In the second half of lap, the BMW is going to be the interesting one because it's got a lot of rotation in the car by default. Our drivers have commented multiple times this season about the fact the BMW M4 Evo, the G82 platform, is a very different beast compared to its F82 predecessor, whereby this is one of those cars that really wants to dance on its rear end, and well, if you can tame it, you may just be able to maximise it through the latter half of the lap. Whereas some cars that naturally draw towards that are the Porsche 718 Cayman, such as that being piloted by Andy Marsden. Also, we do have other drivers out in the Porsche, such as Paul Goffin and also Rob Sharp. So we're expecting the Porsche to be stronger in the latter half of the lap, and then there are those cars that fit right in between, of which we only have 2 of them out here in the form of the McLaren, and one of them is Alex Gall, who right now is looking to go even faster. Taylor Adams raises the bar, and then Gall pierces the sky and puts it into the 36s, a 36.683, albeit Matias Penttilä back on the grid after a significant absence. Great to see him back there for Fury Sim Sport in the Mercedes AMG. He goes 11,000 slower in second place. Jake Cranstone and Matias Penttilä all queuing up right now. This is definitely getting closer and closer in this qualifying session, and it's absolutely incredible to think that right now all these drivers absolutely putting on some stellar laps. And well, the big question mark that we're going to be needing to resolve soon is who's going to be getting on pole, because we're already 6 minutes in, and right now all our drivers absolutely delivered some incredible times here, and I wouldn't be surprised at this rate or not whether potentially it's going to get to the point whereby we're going to be seeing some drivers here try and just out edge each other by the slenderest of margins, perhaps by what will be thousands, less so hundreds at the very end of this qualifying session. 6 minutes left to go, as that's a run wide there from Tem as he tries to follow the draft there of one of the Porsche Caymans. I don't believe that's Cranstone's car. No, Cranstone's a bit further behind in the 78. Trying to see which of our Porsches that was there. I think that might have been the car of Gary Toole that Tem was tucked in behind. He was hoping to use it as a little bit of a slipstream car, or a pace car, what we'd also like to say. But as we near the halfway point of this qualifying session, then we've got to wonder who right now has not set a time yet, and are there any surprises out there? Well, one of them is Matt Slade, who's yet to get a lap on the board in the Mercedes AMG. Hopefully he'll be getting one sooner rather than later, because this is not typical of Slade. He doesn't normally leave it to the last gasp in the qualifying session. Normally he does manage to put it together quite early on and improve from there. Ben Idris Abdullahi as well in the satellite racing for Mustang. He heads across the timeline, and what does he do this time around? And the answer is he goes fourth. That's an impressive lap. Half a second off the overall pole time right now, but a 37.189 for his first valid lap, and he can only build from there, and he's getting a distant draft off of Chris Jennings' car. I think he's going to be happy with that. I think there's going to be some confidence building here for Idris Abdullahi as he powers his way along. Now, conversely, John Bailiff has yet to get a lap on the board, and as he makes his way across the timeline, is this a valid lap? We know the track limits here at the Red Bull Ring are very picky, and indeed very punishing when you get it wrong. That's still not a valid lap there for John Bailiff, as Rob Sharp behind him moves up to a 37.736. But very soon we will be getting an on-board lap with one of our drivers, ladies and gentlemen, because it'd be good to take you around the circuit and give you an explanation of what it looks like from a driver's side view rather than just from a third-person view, which is what all these cameras can give you. As Ryan Petty comes out the final corner, the Oris Racing Digital Red driver heads to the timing line. What's it going to be here as he crosses the line? The answer is going to be It's not a bad lap from Penny, and in fact he goes on to now what will be his second flying lap. So he hasn't had many opportunities so far, but he's left it a bit late in the day, but there's nothing wrong with that, to be fair, as Taylor Adams makes his way out of turn number 9 in towards turn 10, using all the runoff area there as much as you're allowed, and slightly more so. We call that value added tax or tarmac. And as he makes his way up towards the line, what's it going to be for Taylor Adams? It's a 37.096. It's not an improvement, and Alex Gall tucks in behind, but from him we come to Ben Idris Abdullahi as he takes us around for a flying lap of the Red Bull Ring. So up towards turn 1 he goes. He moves to 4th. Core raises the bar to pole position there, but onto the brakes. Idris Abdullahi goes at the 100-metre board down to 2nd gear. Now full throttle all the way up the hill here, trying to catch the toe of the car in front. And as he does build up the speed little by little, right now accelerating at a comfortable rate of knots, but heading into 5th gear here. Now getting towards the highest point of the lap, braking at what will be the 100-metre board, and all the way down the gearbox he goes to 1st gear. Exiting there at an apex speed of 39 miles an hour. Now it's full throttle once again as he heads down towards turn number 4, and into Rauch Corner you'll see the complexion of the lap completely change. But for Idris Abdullahi, as he gets ready to go onto the brakes now, he's got to have his cornering head on here. Goes onto the brakes a little bit earlier than the 100-metre board this time, 120 metres. And as he does so, still goes a bit deep there, overloads the front end of the Mustang. It's a very heavy car, and the weight pitches forward aggressively. But through turn number 5, into his power horse corner he comes. He'll brake at the 50-metre board here, a dab of the brake, get the nose pitched down with the weight coming forward, and now onto the apex curve, and just mount it and fill the throttle. In towards turn number 7, it's the same thing. Brake nice and early, let the car get onto the curb, and then pull the car around the curb, go full throttle, load up the rear right tyre, and it should, if you get it right, skip the car around, as it does there for our driver. Then in towards Yoka Rig corner, looks to his left for the marshal's post. That'll be where he brakes just before the 50-metre board, and down through the gears he goes to 3rd gear. Very nice line there through turn number 9, and now into turn number 10, uses all the rumble strip on the left-hand side, and as he exits, lets the car run out. So long as he keeps 2 wheels on the white and red painted curve, it's valid, and he heads towards the timeline. What's it going to be this time around? And well, by the looks of things, it is not going to be an improvement for him. He stays in 5th place at the moment, but now he heads on towards the next lap and tries to get a little bit closer to Chris Jennings in front. Well, in terms of the important end, who is at the very top of the tower now, as we do look to Guy Edwards, who jumps up to 5th place, and meanwhile Stuart Reynolds has now leapt all the way up to 2nd, so Reynolds left it a bit late there in a very colourful livery machine, it must be said, but well, he's decided to go with a different livery today, and can we fault him for it? He's decided to go for a new year, a new look at least for this round. I'm sure he'll be back in his Fury Simsport colours come what will be our season finale. But from him, we look to Alex Gall. Gall right now has returned to the top step after he was briefly demoted by Niels Core, and he was demoted by Matias Penttilä, and then he was making his way back up there, and Stuart Reynolds almost got close enough, but Gall right now is on top. And this McLaren, we have seen it time and time again, of course, it has a little bit of everything, and Gall was definitely assured come Circuit Zandvoort that he picked the right car for the job. But 4 minutes are left here, and it is looking the tightest it has been for the top 10 spots. And in terms of the AM class pole position, it's Chris Jennings right now, who is currently the fastest out there, but only 400ths over championship leader John Bailiff. But Jennings is doing enough right now to make sure that Bailiff isn't having it his own way. That's the important part of the story here. So long as he finishes ahead of Bailiff, he will level out the playing field slightly going into Alton Park. Ideally, he needs Bailiff to finish off the podium today if he really wants to level the score, but he can only control what he can control, and that is his ability to win the race. John Bailiff's abilities to win the race, alternatively get it wrong in the race, are up to Bailiff and every other circumstance, and that's what Jennings got to think about. You can't think about what your rival's doing, you've got to think about what you're doing and make sure you just beat your rival, and everything else is consigned to the luck of the racing gods, as they say. Jake Cranstone's into the pit lane as I look out my quality booth window. Simon Povey, meanwhile, he has not made his way out into the circuit at all in this session. I wonder whether there's a technical issue with his came, and as a result, he's not going to be able to make it. We are just double checking at the moment. We haven't heard anything with regards to what is Simon Povey, so therefore it might be the situation whereby they are nursing an issue and they've just not been able to check in with race control to inform us as to what's going on. But either way right now, as we're getting closer and closer to the checkered flag being pulled in this session, 2.5 minutes left to go, and it definitely has been a qualifying session filled with surprises. John Roberts for what is the Boosted Motorsport team. Again, really struggling in this qualifying session. Things are not coming together. Lee Berridge, his teammate, having a much better day at the office meanwhile, whereas Roberts is 21st overall, or 11th place in the AM class. For Berridge, as we see there, that's Carl Dean parked up off circuit for a brief moment. Well, Berridge right now, he's up into 3rd in the AM class and 13th overall, and he is only 600ths off of Jennings' 2nd place time, as John Bailiff, in fact, just spotted that, has gone to a provisional pole in the AM class in 9th place on a 37.07. So now it is game on for Chris Jennings. Can he respond here as he goes on to his penultimate lap? Well, let's ride on board and find out. So as he makes his way up the hill in the Mercedes AMG, looking for his left-hand brake marker. There it is, the 100 metre ball. Braking later, 80 metres that time. Really trying to chuck the car into the opening corner. Does so at Nicky Lauda bend, and now straight up the hill towards turn number 3 he goes. He's got a car going up the pits. It's a distance away, however. He won't really be getting a distant toe at this point. Unfortunate for Jennings, he would have hoped that car would have come out a bit closer. But still, you can't choose. As Simon Povey, that is, in front, come out. Jennings braking here at the 100 metre ball. Car on his inside. Well, that might actually be to the benefit of Jennings, because they've actually worked that out quite well. I believe that is the car of none other than, I believe, Matias Penttilä right in front, and Penttilä right now, if he's timed this right, he should be able to stay ahead of Jennings. Jennings should be able to use the toe here. He'll have to brake a little bit earlier here into route corner in order to make sure he doesn't tap the rear of the Fury Simsport Mercedes. But Jennings right now, if he can nail this, he may be gifted quite a bit more time. Let's see what's going to come of this as he weaves and winds his way around. But Chris Jennings right now looking good as he makes his way around the lap. And indeed, we briefly lose our dashboard, but then it comes back again. Jennings right now is doing everything he can in order to get this right, as some stone chips are thrown up there towards the car. Through turn number 7 in towards 8. There's 2 cars in front now. That's Povey back it off, and I think Jennings has realised this is not working, and as a result, he's backed off entirely. But with 20 seconds left to go, he's going to give it another shot here. Can he get across the line as Povey goes up to full throttle there? So Simon Povey in the Red Bull livery machine right now, he wants to go. They all want to go, and well, nobody wants to be too late here. They've got 7 seconds left on the clock. They're all going to squeeze on through. Does Idris Abdullah? He squeezes across the line. I think he does. And the very last driver to do so, I think, is going to be... Did he get across the line in time? I'm not sure. Did Penttilä do so or not? He's going for it. I think he just got across with literally a second to spare. So he's going to be the very last driver to set a final time in this session. And Idris Abdullahi making his way onwards. He did improve on that one to a personal best. He's still going for it here. So they've all left it late. They've all got as little fuel as possible in the car here. And tyres are definitely rubbered in. They might even be quite a bit aware of these tyres. But right now, this could be a last gasp. It could be a last chance saloon for a few of them out there. As meanwhile, coming across that timeline, we have just had, I believe, Rob Sharp. In fact, he's made his way into the pit lane, has Sharp. A couple of drivers are towing after crossing the line. And, well, perhaps one of the biggest surprises is the Track Mouse racing driver, who's normally been very strong in qualifying. It's always gone wrong in the race for some reason. But today, for Mark Johnson, who you see on the screen right now, well, he's currently down in 18th place overall, 8th in the AM class. Can he get himself up there as he crosses the timeline? It was a personal best in the middle sector, and Johnson does. He puts himself 6th in the AM class at a 37.552. He can work with that in the race, I suspect. He's only a 10th of a Gary Toll, and that's going to give him a bit of confidence there that this is not all for naught. Taylor Adams dances his way into Jochen Rindt Bend and goes a bit wide out there. I think he's still on the lap though, so he's going to carry this all the way through to the line. And what can Adams do? He's currently in 7th. However, literally he needs to find himself 3 attempts in order to be able to get ahead of Guy Edwards, and the answer is going to be no. As meanwhile, Matias Penttilä comes into the pit, so does behind it there while the other drivers. But meanwhile, Niels Kor carries on. He was 2.5 attempts down off of the overall pole time. That's the way he's going to stay. He does not improve there as Chris Jennings comes across the line, and Simon Povey gets a lap on the board right at the death of the session. It's a 38.066. That puts him 20th, but he has got a lot of work to do from there. As Idris Abdullahi, meanwhile, has had a moment of madness at turn number 4. It's all gone wrong for him, and he's parked up there with the brakes being held on. So his session has come to an abrupt end. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this qualified session, and it is Alex Gall on pole position once again here at the Red Bull Ring, and Alex Gall making a run of pole positions, it must be said, in the McLaren 570 GT4. But on AM pole position, it will be John Bailiff, but Lee Berridge in the end almost matched him. He was out by only 0.12 of a second was Berridge. So we have got a competition on the AM class from the outset, as they're going to lock out the 5th row of this grid. as we say hello to what is there none other than Anstis96 in the YouTube chat. Good evening to you, good sir, and I hope you're doing well, and it's all been a good start to your 2026. But speaking of the start of the 2026 of racing then, here we go to the grid, ladies and gentlemen, and this is how they all line up. So round 7 of season 7 of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge, sponsored by Oris Digital, it is Alex Gall who returns to the top step once again of the grid for chicane and apex misses. The Frenchman will be looking to try and convert this into a win and get his championship back on the right path. He'll be joined on that front row of the grid by Stuart Reynolds, his main rival for Fury Sim Sport, who wants to make it 3 wins in a row if he can. Behind them, it's the Finn of RD Sim Sport's Matias Penttilä, ahead of Matias Tem. The Fury Sim Sport driver then giving way to the German of Niels Core for Satellite Racing, with Guy Edwards started 6th. Taylor Adams begins this one in 7th for Agenta Sim Racing, ahead of Ben Idris Abdullahi, with the Satellite Racing driver in the end. Not quite getting it to click together in qualifying as much as he would have liked to, and the Frenchman now knows that he's got a tall task ahead of him. However, speak of tall task, speak of John Bailiff, the winner or Bennett racing driver, your AM pole sitter, well, he makes it another AM pole position, but unlike at Oschersleben, he does not have the graphs of several pro drivers between himself and the rest of the Anfield, because joining him on that 5th rider grid to complete your top 10 is Boosted Motorsport's Lee Berridge, and how the tables have turned after a miserable day in Germany just before Christmas. Outside the top 10, best of the rest is Jake Cranstone for the Masters of Talk outfit. The Porsche driver joined on the 6th rider grid by Matt Slate for Agenta Sim Racing, and then we have an all-AM 7th rider grid. Chris Jennings, the 2nd place driver in the AM Championship for Axis Sim Sports, has the competition of Boris Races Rob Sharp for good company on that row, and behind them it continues the theme of Ampères with Gary Toole for GST Racing ahead of Trackmouse Racing's Mark Johnson. Then in 17th place, we've got Paul Goffin for SRM Black, who started off qualifying strong, but didn't quite manage to improve his pace over the session. He's only ahead of Heinz Mayer in the end by half a tenth if that, with the Oris Racing Yellow driver then being followed up by chicane and apex missers Dennis Van Beelen, and completing your top 20, it is Simon Povey, the lowest placed pro driver today for F-Tech Racing. Outside of the top 10 rows of the grid, we then have on row number 11 John Roberts for Boosted Motorsport ahead of Ryan Penny, and the Oris Racing Red driver then being the company of Oliver Carwadine, who starts behind him 23rd. The Oris Racing Yellow driver looking to take the fight to the sister team, but he's also got to be mindful of the fact that he does have the professional photographer for this series of Giles Gardner starting alongside him on that 12th row, and hopefully it won't be a photo finish. One of them will get the upper hand of the other. And then on the final row of the grid to complete our 26 starters, it is Kim Such for Oris Racing Red, head of Andy Marsden for Sim Racing Magazine Black. And that's how they all start this race, ladies and gentlemen, and the formation lap is gradually underway at the moment, but as they all make the way around, well, the field is definitely in good company right now, but we've not got long left to go before we do go green flag racing, and we jump on board for a brief moment with none other than Alex Gall here. And right now, the chicane and apex misses driver, he'll be thinking to himself, what does he need to do in order to make sure this win does not go astray? And the simple answer is, all he needs to do today is get a good launch and then try to pull away. He's been good at doing that over the last couple of rounds, but it's been at circuits which have favoured the technical characteristics of the McLaren versus the straight line capabilities of those behind. But look a bit further back and you look to the likes of Niels Core, who starts 5th here today. And the Satellite Racing driver, well, he's definitely been a bit of a dark horse over the last couple of rounds. His pace has been getting closer and closer to the top 3, and he'll be hoping that he can stay with them and potentially surprise everybody today. But will it be a surprise from him? And meanwhile, of course, Lee Berridge. Here we are with the man who starts 2nd in AM class. It was a nightmare day at Oschersleben, but moved from Germany to Austria, from one neighbouring country to the other, and suddenly all that pace has come around. And can he beat John Bailiff to victory here? Can he take his first win of the season, given the fact the podiums have not come willingly to Boosted Motorsport? We'll have to wait and find out, as further back Chris Jennings here in the Mercedes AMG, the 22 for Axis Sim Sports. He knows what he's got to do. He's got to win in the AM class to keep the championship very much alive at Alton Park. However, anything less than beating John Bailiff, and suddenly it's going to be a fight for second all the way to the close. Well, they're all speeding up now, ladies and gentlemen, because they've all got to hurry up behind the pace car. We are only moments away from going green flag racing, and when we do, it's going to be 60 minutes of racing here at the Red Bull Ring. And to start it all off, it is going to be Alex Gall as he looks to add another win to his name and will potentially just start to move the championship into his hands. And as he builds the speed, it is go, go, go for Alex Giles. He roars away up towards turn number 1. He catches no one by surprise there, just going a little bit after the final corner. And look at how they all fight as they make their way in towards turn number 1 tonight. It's going to be Stuart Reynolds under major pressure for Matias Penttilä, and also what is Matias Tem, his teammate. And right now, the two Matiases are fighting for the right to be the king of the Matias. But as they head up towards turn number 3, right now, nothing is separating them, but Giles under pressure. Here comes Reynolds in the toe. He's immediately going for it. He's going to look around the outside here into the hairpin corner of AMS-AMG, and as they make their way hard on the brakes, right now Gold defending to the inside. John Bailiff further back fighting still with Lee Berridge, and Jake Cranstone gets in amongst the two of them there, and it looks as though right now Cranstone's going to fall away to the Mustangs on the final stretch before they get to the corners. But looking back to your leaders as they come down the hill here in towards the braking zone, right now Reynolds, he has got ahead of Gold. He's been able to outpower him there in the traction zone, and Tem is now trying to take a sneak peek up the inside. Right now Alex Gold will need to get back ahead quicker than most, because otherwise that pressure is only going to build. Further back, Rob Sharp and Gary Toole here. Well, they're right now here to stay and fight their way as they're fighting over 4th place in the AM class, with Sharp losing out to Toole in the opening couple of corners. It's been an intriguing opening lap, but everyone has safely made it through the opening few corners as we look back to Ryan Petty and Oliver Carwadine. And these two fighting over 11th place in the AM class and 22nd overall, just behind John Roberts. But no mistakes from anybody. Everyone has been cleanly through the opening lap, with a bit of gravel being kicked up there, but that's to be expected. Mark Johnson, he's had a bit of a slow start here. Hasn't really gained or lost anything, but he's got Simon Povey for close company. He's gained 3 places already. The pro driver picking his way through the AMs. And perhaps that's to be expected when he's qualified outside of where he would normally be expected. But back to the front of the field then, as we go on to lap number 2, it's Reynolds who leads right now ahead of Alex Gall, with Matias Tem in third ahead of Matias Penttilä. Then we have Guy Edwards in 5th place ahead of Niels Kaur, followed by Taylor Adams. Then we have Ben Idris Abdullahi ahead of John Bailiff, who is 9th overall, but the leader of the AM class ahead of Lee Berridge. Berridge couldn't quite get the jump on him at the start, but still knows the tail. That's your top 10. Jake Cranstone is best of the rest at 11th ahead of Matt Slade, with Chris Jennings your 3rd place AM driver ahead of Gary Toole and Rob Sharp, his 2 AM compatriots, and that's how your top 15 sits after 1 lap. Into the braking zone for turn number 3 they come once again. Further back, we've got a bit of a look there. That is going to be, I believe that's John Roberts having to go defensive versus Paul Goffin, as Goffin looking for the move on him, and in the end Goffin couldn't quite make it happen, and Roberts in fact taking a place now to move up from his 10th place start. Goffin has had a bit of a nightmare start by comparison. He's lost 3 now as he heads down towards turn number 4 for the second time of asking. He won't want to make a habit of it, but we can expect the Porsches perhaps to struggle a little bit in the early stages, particularly with those long stretches. But as the field starts to spread out, that's where the Porsche Caymans might start to come into an element of their own. It's not the fastest car on the straight. By the furthest, it is arguably the weakest on the straight. But in the corners, that's where the mid-engine rear-wheel drive car really comes to life. And of course, Porsche known as the king of the corners for the simple reason they always try to put the centre of mass over the rear axle wherever possible in their more perhaps infamous 911 models, but also the Cayman being a very strong model both on the road as a road car and also as a racing car. But as they race their way onwards, right now all the fields still come to be together here. It's wonderful to see. Will be at the Red Bull Ring does normally generate very close pack racing, and gradually you start to see the field split into packs. And this goes to demonstrate just how close the pace is between drivers. As hold up a second, that's a car around. They all take evasive action. Out to the final corner, that's Matt Slade, who's fallen victim to the A-run ring curve. And he's gone spinning around, but how exactly has it all gone wrong for Matt Slade? Well, we'll find out very quickly, because here is a replay. This was Slate making his way out to the final corner, and as he did, well, gets the power down and runs out very wide. Rear left tyre just gets on the marbles there, and then he tries to counter steer. Oh my good lord! Mark Johnson now having to take a very late reaction, and everyone else behind doing very well to see where the Mercedes was going to come to a halt. But a nasty shunt there into the barrier for Matt Slate as he tried to counter-correct the car, and in the end it didn't quite work out, and it's left him without a front bumper, and indeed a car that right now might be struggling on to its pit stop for the repair work. We come back, he's still trying to push on, but you can see there he has got the meatball flag to the car. That's the orange circle with the black background, and that means he will need to pit for repair work within the next 3 laps of that flag being gifted to him, as otherwise he will be disqualified from the race due to the damage of the car. It's unsafe to race that car effectively. And meanwhile, as we leave the stricken pro driver behind for Magenta Sim Racing, well, they've only got one driver now inside the top 10. It's Taylor Adams, who you can see in the rear of the picture in 7th, but Stuart Reynolds meanwhile continuing to push on and trying to push away. With a very colourful livery here today, and perhaps the change of colours for Fury Sim Sport has just enabled him to really come alive. The flames on the side of the car there, I would imagine, perhaps gifted him what is an extra 5% mentally speed, because whenever you see a car wrapped in flames, they do say, of course, the flames won't make you go any faster, but I get the feeling that Stuart Reynolds right now is definitely feeling as though the speed is with him. Matias Penttilä, meanwhile, behind in third place. The Fury Sim Sport driver here staying with his teammate Nate's goal, and this puts them in a very interesting situation, because Tem's not really a competitor in the overall championship anymore. He hasn't got the ability to win it, per se, but what he could do here is put Goal under a lot of pressure, and potentially Fury Sim Sport can do a bit of a double team here. Of course, they have to keep it fair. They're not allowed to do any intentional blocking or anything of that description, but if they could get Tem in front of Goal somehow, then somehow they could manage to find a way to really slow his race down by essentially just saying to Tem over the radio, right, Goal's behind you, you've got to go as defensive as humanly possible. And if he was to do so, even for a couple of laps, that would give Stuart Reynolds a lot of time. Of course, the converse is true. The fact that Goal is behind Reynolds at the moment, when he has been in these situations in the past, we have typically seen that Goal has been very strong on fuel saving in the McLaren. It's been very fuel efficient. But we're looking at Rob Sharp here as he chases after Gary Toole in the battle of the Porsches, and we jump on board with Sharp. Now coming down through Power Horse Corner here, and Sharp has been one of those drivers. He's not been the fastest necessarily in the AM class, however he has picked up a podium or two this season, and his game has really been just to gradually build up over the race distance, and that's what we saw earlier on, particularly at Circuit Zandvoort, in the race where every AM driver came to blows with either a barrier or another driver at some point. Nobody was left with a car without any damage to it over the course of that race, but Rob Sharp demonstrated his resilience there, and he's demonstrated time and time again just how over the race distance he's one of the most consistent drivers. But riding on board here with the Ouroboros racing driver, well, right now as he powers along, he's inching a little bit closer to Gary Toole at this point, but understandably this is where you start to question, do you go for the move or do you fuel save here and think about the strategy? Because as a reminder, typically all these races have been two-stop races for the vast majority, if not every driver per round, and we normally see those pit stops around what is 17 minutes into the race of the first stop, all the way through to around 23 minutes into the race. That's the initial window, and then depending on the amount of fuel saving and what our drivers are able to do strategy-wise, the second pit stop varies between 35 minutes into the race and around 47 minutes into the race. So it does lead to a bit more of what is flexibility in that final stop, as we leave Rob Sharp behind for now. And he continues that charge after Toole. He is 3 attempts behind, but I don't think he's going to be making a move this time. He looks for it, but that might just be as much to give himself sighting of the apex and his braking point. Now, Oliver Carwadine has a yellow flag to his name. That will be for track limit, and therefore he's got a slowdown penalty that he's going to serve, and he serves it there immediately on the exit of turn before. Something tells me he was hoping he could have burnt it by being just a little bit gradual with throttle inputs onto the run from turn 3 to 4. There's a trick to burning a slowdown penalty where essentially, as you exit the corner, you don't exit 100% throttle. Instead, you feather off the throttle slightly, and the idea is you naturally lose time on the run down towards the next corner. But I think Carwadine there noticed that he hadn't burned all the penalty, and suddenly he only had a couple of seconds left before it got converted into a black flag, at which point he would have had a drive-through penalty for not obeying the slowdown. And, well, nobody wants that, because that completely decimates your race. And Carwadine having to react there, and, well, he had a bit of space to work with, given the fact that he does have Jules Gardner being the best part of 1.8 seconds behind in the rather silver and shiny Porsche Cayman. But right now, I think Jules here just trying to catch up. As he builds on the pace and makes his way onwards, we say hello in the YouTube chat there to Nick DeBeck. Hope you're doing well, Nick. And from them, we come back to the AM leaders, because here's the fight for 9th overall. Bailiff versus Berridge. And right now, it's going to be close to the brakes. That is very, very close there between the two of them. And Lee Berridge, he went for it, and Bailiff said, if you're going to go for it there, I'm going to squeeze you as much as I'm allowed to. But these two right now making their way down towards turn number 4. And Lee Berridge here, well, I don't know what he's done over Christmas, but he's worked hard on driving that Mustang. And it shows, because right now he is keeping John Bailiff honest, as Bailiff had a tiny micro lock up on the front right brake, went deep out the corner but managed to lean into the ABS enough to keep the BMW point at the straight and narrow. But Berridge is all over the back of him like a bad rash, and as we look back for the rear of the number 23 BMW for Win It or Bin It Racing, well, at this rate it might literally be living by his team name standard there, because of the fact he's under so much pressure that I wouldn't be surprised if potentially he is starting to be put in an uncomfortable position on the circuit runs a little bit wide there out of 7 into 8. You can see by the fact he took to the gravel for a brief moment and then had to jerk the car back onto the tarmac. This is not comfortable here for Bailiff. And, well, with that discomfort and with more fighting between them, you've got Jake Cranstoun next. He's only 2 tenths behind this pair. You can see him there poking his way in the Porsche Cayman. And then Chris Jennings is a further 8 tenths back and is getting closer to this. So Jennings right now will be looking at this and thinking, okay, if they're fighting, how do I get involved? But is that a look there from Jake Cranstoun? It was, and that's a peek up the inside meanwhile from Berridge. Berridge having to go offensive-defensive there, gets a much better run out the corner, and this is where the Mustang's got the acceleration. We saw it at Le Mans. The Mustang was an absolute monster, but it in the hands of Daniel Parent-Smith, picking up his one and only win of the season there, as they head up the hill in towards turn number 3 this time. Berridge is on the inside. What can Bailiff do here to stop this? Well, he's going to try and go around the outside or switch it back. The outside's going to be the option here, but it's not going to work. And power down there for Jake Cranstoun. I thought that was going around there, but somehow he committed to the bit with the throttle and he's kept it pointed to the straight line. The only problem is he hasn't got a draft to work with, and suddenly all that speed he picked up out the corner is for naught as Chris Jennings looks at this. And Jennings right now, surely he's got to be licking his lips together and thinking, right, keep fighting. This race could come to me. And if you were Chris Jennings at this point, what would you do? You'd probably feel safe off the back of this because if they're knocking time out of each other, you could afford to lift off the throttle a little bit early and just give yourself some comfort. We may only be 11 minutes into this race, but right now every 0.1 of a litre saved at this point, it could be worth whole seconds later on over the race distance, if not the best part of half a minute. And we'll see what's going to happen here as time rages on. But as they weave and wind their way up towards turn number 9 once again, a bit further back, Mark Johnson here now seems to have found a little bit of metal on pace as he begins to chase after Rob Sharp. It's taken some time here for Johnson to really get up to speed, and the Traphouse Racing driver really a very different end of the spectrum today. And I wonder whether, since all the difficulties of the last couple of rounds where he's been ferociously qualified and he's gone very well in the race only to see it all to fall to bits within the opening 10 to 15 minutes of the race, whether he's decided here today instead to take a different approach, be a bit more conservative. Well, as Simon Povey there makes a move on Chris Jennings, although it's Povey's not been conservative here, he's been forward, but I think Jennings here realised he doesn't need to worry too much at the moment. That's a swap of position, but here comes Jennings back at Povey. Povey puts the car on the inside of this as they come through the curve of 2. Will there be a change onto the brakes here? No, there won't, but Jennings definitely right now making sure, as far as he's concerned, so long as the pro drives that Povey and Cranstoun stay behind Bailiff and Berridge nice and close, he doesn't have to do anything. If they start to pull away, then he's now got to try and think of a plan B and think of it very quickly. So this race is definitely developing with intrigue in the AM lead battle, and all the AM podium positions right now open for what is fighting later on. With Gary Toole on the back of Jennings, he's your 4th place AM driver, and Rob Sharp and Mark Johnson, another 2 AM drivers, are getting closer and by the corner turned. But with that, we take a look back in time at exactly how Lee Berridge made that move on John Bailiff. Now this was the roar up the hill, and at the time it was Berridge picking up a huge amount of speed out of turn 1 in that Mustang. Onto the brakes he went, and as he did so, this camera angle really giving you an idea of the run that Berridge had all the way through, and Bailiff fought it hard to be fair, as did Jake Cranstoun in terms of his move on the inside. But the problem was Cranstoun just did not get the traction off the corner in the end, as a result a little bit of power oversteer and no slipstream, and as much as Bailiff wanted to come back at this point, he opted not to, and understandably because there would have been no value in doing so. We had this a little bit later for Simon Povey. This was into turn number 1 versus Chris Jennings, and as he built up the speed here and looked up the inside, went for the move, and Jennings did not fight it at all, recognising there is zero value in fighting at this point in the race when it's not a driver he needs to fight with championship wise. So back to your live racing we come. Some great moments there between the two. Matt Solet's car still in the pit lane being repaired at the moment. It is now the best part of 5 laps down, but he is still classified as a runner at the moment. Hopefully we'll see him back out there a bit later on. But from the mid-pack, let's come to the front of the pack. And here is Stuart Reynolds still ahead of Alex Gall. Half a second is the delta. Under braking it will weave and wind, and that's the concertina effect for you. And 9 tenths behind is Reynolds' teammate Matias Penttilä. Right now, Reynolds doing everything right, or so it would seem. That's Tem, Penttilä and Guy Edwards. Well, they all still are staying all right in this fight. With Niels Core also being brought in, it is a top 6, separated by 3 seconds in totality. The last time we saw this well, we haven't really seen this all season, to be fair. We saw it at Le Mans in the fight for 2nd through to 6th at one point. We've not seen the fight for the lead be this close between so many drivers this deep into the race. Normally, after 10 minutes, it's been a top 3 or a top 2 that's broken away. But definitely here right now, we are seeing a much closer pack. It might be because of the circuit, but also I get the feeling right now that everyone over the Christmas period has really been getting hard working on this. And as a result, it's meant the field has got even more competitive. But as we look back to what is Simon Povey and Jake Cradstone here, well, they continue to try and marshal along Bailiff and Berridge. Well, if you're John Bailiff at this point, what exactly do you do? Do you let these two pro drivers go, or do you fight them if they start to show that they want to make a move? And I think if you're John Bailiff here, you've got to think about the bigger championship picture, and that is that you need to stay behind Berridge wherever possible. So long as you're ahead of Jennings, Sharp, and also Dennis Van Beelen, you're absolutely fine in theory in the championship. But of course, there's always points left on the table if you don't win the race, and that's why he might be looking at this and thinking, well, ideally, I do need to be ahead. As they come into the braking zone, here comes Povey up the inside, using the stronger brakes of the Porsche to his advantage. Bailiff gives them all the space and plenty more. Bailiff reveals his hand, which is he doesn't need to fight for this, and he's aware of it. It's a smart driving there from John Bailiff. Jennings will get a little bit closer, but Bailiff now already sending the signal, which is, I don't need to win this race on the road at least. As meanwhile, Povey diving to the inside there. Well, that was very enthusiastic. The emergency brake lights there coming on for a brief moment. That's how hard he had to go onto the brakes there. And, well, as he brings it back on, I think he missed his braking zone by the best part of about 10 metres. And, well, Povey managed to get it stopped. He had to lean so hard into the ABS, I wouldn't be surprised if the front brakes and also the front tyres have taken a bit of excess heat as a result of that. But he's managed to stop it this time around as he now heads in towards turns 7 and 8. And Berridge is going to be thinking to himself, okay, Simon, if you're going to go for it, please get it right next time. I can't really afford to keep having this happen. Jake Cradstone's going to be looking at this and thinking, okay, if he's making mistakes, when's the next one going to come? So I'd like to take the place. I'll look a bit further back. Sharp and Tall together still. The two Porsche drivers still creeping closer and closer to Jennings. And, well, they come down towards the end of this lap. Their gap now to Jennings is 1 second. But Mark Johnson has caught up. And Heinz Mayer is only 2.1 seconds behind. He's getting close as well. The pace of this pack, all the way from 9th through to 16th, is dwindling because of what's happened at the very front of it. Natural concertina effect, of course, and the natural effect of drivers going side by side through corners. But it's becoming pronounced. We're already getting a bit of a bottleneck of cars here as they make the way all onwards. Lee Berridge using the straight line speed of that Mustang to stay comfortably ahead. But it's in these braking zones where the pros and the Porsches, the Povey and Cranstone, really are so eager to make progress here. But every time they get closer, after that Mustang just has the legs to force them to stay at bay for a little bit longer. Ryan Penny on the inside here of John Roberts. This is going to be for 20th place overall. Penny does overstep the mark a little bit there in terms of his apex. Oh, he does give Roberts the opportunity to fight him, to be fair, so there's no need to lift off necessarily. And they pick up the toe of the car in front, and that is going to be the car of Paul Goffin, who is going to share the toe between the two of them. Naturally, he doesn't want either one of them to get the upper hand, but Penny's going to come absolutely blazing into the braking zone. Goffin gives it the space. Oh, my goodness. Goffin here gets the car to control. That's where he got the power down with the rear left tyre still in the gravel. And, well, as a result, Ryan Penny does take the place in the most unconventional pass of the season, perhaps. And I think if that goes to the stewards after the racing today, they're going to be a bit perplexed at that one. Albeit, I think Ryan Penny will put his hand up and say, okay, perhaps I went in a little bit too eagerly on that one. John Roberts will be looking at this and thinking right now, well, I'm glad it's Paul Goffin and not me who ended up the recipient of a little bit of door bashing there. Completely unintentional from Ryan Penny, that's for certain. But it caught Goffin out, and in the end, it almost caught them all out. And we'll get a replay of that shortly, because my good Lord, was that a moment and a half. But as they come towards the end of this lap right now, I suspect they'll calm things down. Meanwhile, things are not coming down here behind Lee Berridge, who right now still has Povey and Cranstone looking behind. Albeit Berridge runs out a bit wide. He's got to be careful. Go any wider than that. If all four wheels go beyond the yellow sausage curve, he will be subject to a slowdown penalty. And that's why he slowed down a little bit to make sure the car didn't weave too wide this time. Simon Povey doesn't need to think twice about it. He's going to go up the inside. Doors open here. Here comes Jake Cranstone as well. Cranstone says, right, if one Porsche can go through, so could two. At this point, Berridge says, no, and he goes round. He goes completely round. Does Lee Berridge? And, well, was that part of contact, or was it just where he's come off the sausage curve? Either way, Lee Berridge, who was the lead in the AM class, spins and gets himself back in the right direction. But he's dropped all the way down to 8th place here in the AM class and down to 18th overall. And here comes Ryan Penny. Here comes John Roberts. Here comes Paul Goffin. Is he going to lose even more here? He may just do so, because Penny's going to look around the outside. Meaning it's all for naught, and he does manage to hold on to position, although he goes deep. Penny taps him on the rear. And as Penny makes way out the corner right now, well, Berridge is going to have to go defensive up towards Power Horse Curve. It's not going to be easy here with John Roberts staying right in the hunt. And Paul Goffin watching this one, but goodness me, what a moment there. Plenty of surprises, and right now that means that John Bailiff is back in the lead of the AM class here, but Lee Berridge is going to be one to watch later on in this race, because I suspect with 40 minutes left to go, the fight will not have left him yet. They do say the new Ford Mustang has a dark horse model, and I definitely think he is going to be the dark horse on this grid all the way to the very end. Rob Sharp comes into the pits. He decides to get out of the pack early. So does Heinz Mayer. Interesting, because Heinz Mayer didn't catch up to that pack. He was sniffing on the back of it, and I wonder here whether they've read the reading or the writing on the wall, which is essentially to say that that pack is just taking time out of itself. And once they all come on down, well, coming into their parking positions in the pits, we'll have to wait and see where they factor back in. As meanwhile, Gary Toole and Mark Johnson still together. Of course, now they're third and fourth in the AM class, but this is on circuit. It's not on strategy. We'll have to wait and see how they fit back together when everyone's completed their first round of pit stops. But Johnson definitely has been playing a much more considerate game here today, and Gary Toole has been obliging, to be fair. They've worked together so far and have just gradually moved forward lap by lap, corner to corner. With that, we take a look back up the front of the field, because here is Stuart Reynolds coming over the crest of turn number 6. Lovely camera angle there. You can see the elevation drop gradually from corner entry to exit, how it becomes off-camber as you near the apex on entry. But as Reynolds makes his way through turn 7 into 8, he is not dropping guile by much. Gap now up to almost a second, but it is flittering between 9/10 and a second. With Matias Penttilä 1.5 seconds back by comparison, and still eager to get involved if he can. Well, we'll have to wait and find out what he can do from there, as Guy Edwards, meanwhile, always comes into the pits behind. So everyone tucks into the pits. Niels Core stays out. So the number 15 driver has managed to go an extra lap. And, well, does that surprise us? Perhaps not. We have seen him go extra laps in the past. But what is definitely intriguing right now for the Satellite Racing driver is, by pulling himself out of the pack, has he gifted himself an opportunity here to perhaps do a little bit of overcutting on strategy. He's got Andy Marsden just leaving the pit lane in front of him, I do believe. And as Marsden makes his way along, I think for Niels Core, he'll hope he can get the distance off that Porsche. In fact, Marsden there completely backs off, respecting the blue flags. And so Core will be a little bit disappointed he perhaps wasn't able to get a couple more miles an hour, perhaps save himself a tenth or two, but still, that's the way it's gone. Cranstone and John Bailiff have both stayed out. There they both are, as they make the way onwards. And meanwhile, leaving the pit lane, it is still Stuart Reynolds then, who leads out of the pits ahead of Alex Gall, with Matias Penttilä a little bit further back this time. Gall having a much longer pit stop, as Tem there putting 2 wheels slightly beyond the white exit lines. I think he's got away with it this time, although I have to wait and see as he heads up the hill. I think he has, because of the fact the wheels were on the lines rather than beyond them. There is a particular ruling about that on the exit of the pit lane here at the Red Bull Ring. Right now, Matias Penttilä keeping it together or thereabouts, with Guy Edwards and Matias Penttilä behind. But that's intriguing. Matias Penttilä has actually lost out in the pits versus Edwards. He's lost a position, so therefore Edwards is continuing to move forward here, albeit very close between the two of them, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a bit more fighting later on in this race, as right now that's one of 2 pit stops we're expected here today, and things could definitely still switch. Lee Berridge, he served his pit stop, and he's on the attack versus Ryan Penny. Trying to come back at Penny here. Up the inside he goes. That's very aggressive here. Well, I don't know if he was taking a leaf out of Ryan Penny's book from a couple of laps ago, but it's so right now they're giving each other as good as they can get. And as they make the way down towards turn number 4 right now, well, Berridge is going to have all the overspeed here. To be fair to him, he didn't elbow Penny off the road. He didn't force him off the road either. There was space to cooperate, albeit a limited amount, but still, it was enough. Penny on the brakes there, and this is getting very tense between the two of them. You can feel it now. It's simmering a little bit here as Penny once again leading late on the brakes there into turn number 4, but in the end Lee Berridge will get that move done or thereabouts. And Penny now, oh, there's contact between the two of them in towards Powerhouse corner, or was there? The camera angle deceptive, perhaps indicating there was, but we'll have to wait and see. We'll need to get a replay of that, as in the end John Roberts was able just to avoid getting caught up in all of that, but a little bit of drama there through Powerhouse corner, and Lee Berridge's race going from good to bad to worse very gradually. Meanwhile, leaving the pit lane, there is Jake Cranstone, there's John Bailiff behind him, and Idris Abdullah, he goes through the bottom of our camera. And well, in terms of the gaps, Stuart Reynolds has been able to open up a bit more of a lead, because Matias Penttilä, Alex Gold and Guy Edwards are together here. So there's been change afoot, particularly for Matias Penttilä, who's moved ahead of Goal, and Edwards is right behind them. We need to get a replay of that when we can, because that is significant. And Stuart Reynolds immediately now is in a position to try and walk away with this race to make it 3 in a row and level the playing field before the season finale at Alton Park. Now on the radio, it will be to Matias Penttilä, Reynolds' teammate. You've got to keep that McLaren behind you for as long as humanly possible. Do Do not let it get ahead of you. The one thing Alex Gall can do, of course, he can, of course, save fuel behind Tem, but that's where Tem might consider doing some fuel saving of his own. And if he does so, a little bit of lift and coast, well, that will naturally burn the pace out of his race, and that's what will force Alex Gall to use more fuel to overtake him. Again, it's not blocking, it's not unfair driving. If you're just fuel saving out there, Gall's got to be cognizant of it, so long as Tem is not being too aggressive with it, of course. And as they make the way up the hill in towards turn number 9, I mean, all these drivers know each other, they've known each other for years, so therefore it'll be fair racing every step of the way. But this is where team tactics can work out a treat. But Alex Gall is no stranger to them. He's a professional, and he will know exactly what he needs to do and when, and whether the car in front of him is now starting to act as a little bit of a buffer to the race leader as they come on to lap number 16, roaring the way on past us here. And right now, Tem and Gall, that's how they are for second and third, with Edwards in fourth behind and Penttilä and Core closing. But Stuart Reynolds is entirely in control of this race at the front, at least for the time being, as we get towards the 35-minute remaining mark. But with that, we've had plenty of excitement. Let's take a look back at some of the big moments from more recent moments, albeit, in fact, we're not going to, because Guy Edwards is actually looking up the inside there for a brief moment versus Gall. He's not going to be able to do it this time. Instead, he's going to wait. And meanwhile, as they exit the corner, well, Alex Gall right now carried on. Darcy, though there's not going to be too much progress here, and therefore we will take a look back. Firstly, at the Ryan Penny-John Roberts battle. So this was the run down towards turn number 4, back on lap number 11. Penny in the white BMW, you'll notice, battling side by side with Roberts, but goes light on the brakes here and goes all the way up the inside of none other than Paul Goffin. Now, coming out of the corner, was there contact? No, and then there was, because Paul Goffin, oh my goodness, there was contact as well there. We didn't see that the first time round to John Roberts. So Paul Goffin got caught out, ran wide as a result of Penny coming in too hot to the corner, and as he tried to get the power down, his rejoin to the tarmac is what upset the car, and he tapped both Penny and also Roberts, and how the three survived that, well done to all three of them. We then had this on lap number 12 for Lee Berridge as he made his way out to turn number 3. Under braking there, side by side with Simon Povey. This angle might tell us a little bit more. Hit the sausage curb there. That's what sent him around. The angle we had suggested there was contact between himself and Povey. There was, but only after Berridge had put his tyres on the sausage curb and the car had gone towards Povey's in the first place. Well done to Povey for keeping the car straight, and that helped Berridge, I think, get the car turned back around quicker because the two didn't get completely collected together. But that was the nightmare moment there for Lee Berridge, where it all went absolutely wrong. And then, of course, we did have what was this big moment for Matias Penttilä versus Alex Gall. This was only moments ago on lap number 14, so it's after the pit stop. And Gall had an absolutely poor run there at turn number 7 into 8. And Tem said, right, thank you very much. I'm going all in for this. Here he goes. Up the inside and onto the brakes he went. And in the end, job done there into Jochen Rindt Bend. And you can see he had to really put the brakes back on to get the car stopped in time, not to run wide and pick up a track limit infringement. And Matias Tem making a smooth move there. And that's the important one. But we come back to your racing in good time, because we come back to the drivers we were just talking about in the past. Here in the present, Tem, Gall and Edwards are still nose to tail together. And the Abruzzi sponsor Mercedes right now for Fury Sim Sport is definitely enjoying what is a run whereby it's working to the team's advantage. And keep in mind, Fury Sim Sport would love to get some big points in the Teams Championship as well to try and move their campaign along. Whilst they're not candidates for the crown, they're definitely candidates for a top 5 finish this season. So right now, every point they get will matter massively in their battle with their rivals. But Tem is keeping Gall, Edwards and Penttilä very condensed together. And here comes Guy Edwards looking around the outside in the Mustang. As Gall going defensive there through turn number 9. Car drifted a little bit, that's the inside line. But Gall there keeps it nicely within track limits. And Edwards and Penttilä are now close together. The RD Sim Sport driver here really marshalling and muscling in as we ride aboard, looking down over the nose of the RD Sim Sport machine for the flying Finn. But as he looks to move into the inside here, is he going to go for it into turn 1? No, he's not. He fakes it out there. The idea being, of course, if you go for a 2 wide into turn 1, it costs you so much time in the run up towards turn number 3. So Penttilä in the end just simply put his nose there and saying to Edwards, look at me, don't look at your braking zone. But Edwards has been there. He's seen it all before in the 55, and he's only got his eyes on one thing. It is the chicane at Apex Mrs. McLaren of Gall, but he's not going to get it there on the inside. Onto the brakes they all go, and as Penttilä looks around down the outside. It's not going to work. Edwards there going offensive, defensive. It's working out so well for Edwards here. He's really got the Ford Mustang now down here. It's proven to be such a strong car in the opening 2/3 of this lap. It's only in the last couple of corners where it seems to lose out versus the Mercedes and McLaren as they come onto the brakes here right now. Penttilä just had to keep on watching. But you can see Tem there as well, heavy on the brakes. That Mercedes right now, I think Tem is struggling with front tyre temperatures a little bit. The car's just not stopping the way he wants it to, and this is dragging his pack further and further backwards. Niels Core is watching this at a distance, and if you were the satellite racing driver at this point, you've got to be certainly thinking now, with about what is 6 or 7 minutes before the second pit window opens, you've got to be thinking, well, if they're going to keep fighting like this, can I fuel save? Can I leap ahead of them? You've got to do something, because otherwise you're going to be finding yourself in a pack that's never really going to break up, and that is going to cause frustration. And that is the thing, if you're in this pack right now, all these drivers are going to be thinking, what are their strategic options? They'll be on the radio to their spotters, to their team principals, saying, what can we do to get out of this? Because all it's doing is giving the race leader, Stuart Reynolds, a bigger and bigger gap, and the proof is in the pudding with that, because Stuart Reynolds now is 6 seconds clear. That lap, a 36.64 for Reynolds. For Tem, a 37.0. That's another 4 temps gained. But here is a look at the inside. Penttilä goes for it this time. He moves into turn 1 on the inside line. And well, as they make their way too wide up the hill, it's going to be a drag race here. The battle of the V8s. 6.3 litres in nature. The German machinery of the Mercedes. Meanwhile, you've got the 5-litre V8 there of the Ford Mustang for the US of A. Will American muscle or German powerhouse win? And in the end is going to be Penttilä on the inside. And I don't think Edwards has got enough grip there to make this work. He's going to fall in behind, so Penttilä gets it done there, moving up into 4th. It costs a bit of time versus Goal and Tem, but I get the feeling right now that Penttilä based this on the idea that there's going to be more fighting between the two in front, and that will gradually bring them back together, as now Niels Core only situates himself 8 tenths behind. And very happily, though, I can imagine he'll be feeling as though that this is definitely a race that is coming to him. Now, one thing we haven't commented about since the first pit stop as well, we've been talking a lot about the overall and pro battling. What about the AMs? John Bailiff is still your leader, but you may notice that there's a Porsche behind him now. That wasn't there previously. It's Rob Sharp. He has leapt ahead of Chris Jennings as a result of the pit stops, as we're to understand it. And as a result, Sharp right now is really starting to get into this race little by little. Cranstone and Simon Povey are still ahead of this AM pack, and it is really all the pros now, the running pros that is, ahead of all the running AMs. So we're seeing the separation of the classes here, but it leads to intrigue because now everybody is fighting somebody who is really relevant to them in their respective championship campaigns. But Sharp is the big interesting one because he's used strategy to move into second from that 3rd place to 4th place battle, and if he can go even further at this point, what could he achieve next? Well, we're going to have to find out, as there's been a bit of misery for Lee Berridge meanwhile. That's a powerhouse corner. What's happened there? Well, Power Horse, I should say, as he brings himself back onto the circuit. And as he does so for Lee Berridge, here's a replay to explain. So heading in towards Power Horse, went in a full attack as he normally would. A bit too much speed there perhaps. Yes, and the rear end slid loose. He had to correct it, and in the end went to the gravel and then gradually rejoined. But we'll have to hold the fort on that, because back to your leaders we come, live on screen. This is the fight for second place, and Goals had a good run out of turn number 3 here, coming out of AMS AG, and down towards Roush corner he comes, looking around the outside again. Can he get it done here? Can he clear the obstacle that is the second member of Fury Sim Sport? Knows the answer, because Tem there just simply says to him, well, you can try it on the outside, but I can assure you, you're going to run out of road eventually. He doesn't run him off the road, but he makes it untenable to get to turn number 6 ready road to work with, and that's what you can do here with the switchback of the right-handers into the left-handers. You can essentially say to the driver on the outside, you can be on the inside for the next corner, but I'm not going to give you a very nice line to deal with it, and you're going to go straight on at the next corner if you don't get it right. So Tem right now really proving to be just an absolute thorn in his whole pack side, and to be fair, as much as this has benefited his teammate, he's also doing it for his own championship, because he wants a big landmark result as well. The best results he's had this season have been towards the bottom end of the podium. A second place would be his best result by a comfortable margin, as he makes his way out on the final corner, almost loses it there as he rejoins the tarmac. My goodness, Matias Penttilä right now is pushing hard here to hold on to this. I think he's on the absolute limit of what he can do in that Mercedes. But to be fair, that's not to his detriment. Tap to the rear of the car, and Tem goes round. Goal takes the escape road to the outside, and we'll get a replay of that shortly as to what exactly happened. But Goals had to take the runoff area. That's going to be a slowdown for the McLaren driver, and well, things have bubbled over slightly. Matias Penttilä has been able to squeeze on through, and now here's the second part of this story, because they head up the hill. It's Edwards versus Niels Core, and Core's been waiting for this. He's just been watching for the best part of 20 laps. seeing what's going to unfold, and in the end it is going to be caught ahead of Edwards for a brief moment, but then it's not, as now Edwards gets back ahead in the power zone. Here comes Goal looking on the left of your picture. Indeed, he's going to be on the inside, but tucks back in behind Core. My goodness, this has had plenty of twists and turns. It is a dramatic story right now, and indeed, if this was a book, I think we'd be writing the sequel to this come the time we get towards the final stint of this race. But with that, we take a look back at exactly what happened between Alex Goal and Matias Penttilä. So this was making their way up towards turn number 1. We're looking back from the rear of the Fury Supersport machine. Let's listen in. And under braking, there was the tiniest of taps there to Matias Penttilä's car. That's just a small bit of misanticipation in the braking zone from Alex Goal there by the looks of things, based on that camera angle, and that's what sent Tem round. Tem won't be too pleased about that, but in the heat of the moment, you can understand the fact of that. Goal did not mean any malice there as we look from the exterior cameras once again, and well, as he made his way into that braking zone, it's obscured there, but you can see the twitch on the front end of the car, and well, there was also a bit of queuing up there. Penttilä was tapped on the rear by Edwards. That's what propelled him forward out of turn number 1. That being in reaction, it was Penttilä who backed off there into the braking zone because of what he saw happen in front of him, and it led to this absolutely incredible free wide up the hill, albeit it was Edwards and Core side by side. Into that braking zone they went, and as they made the way on through, this alternative camera angle giving you a demonstration of how Edwards was able to get things nice and planted with the throttle and just be able to keep himself nice and safe by the time they got to turn 4. So back we come to them once again. This fight is still going on. Alex Goal right now is throwing everything at this. I think right now the opportunity to finish on the podium is slipping out of his grasp, and with it the comfort of the top of the championship table is also slipping as well. This is not what we expected on the return to the race here. Indeed, this was not part of the planned script, but then again, that's the great thing, of course, the fact that motorsport is unpredictable, and indeed the racing has been firm but fair every step of the way. And when you are racing this close, of course, in any series, you could expect there are going to be little bumps, there are going to be scrapes, so that's because it means so much to these drivers as they roar the way around. For Matias Penttilä right now, he's still ahead of Ben Idris Abdullahi, the satellite racing Ford Mustang, keeping Tem in close company. But what Matias can now do, of course, he can start to think about pitting early. He hasn't got any pressure anymore, and also he has got a faster pair available to him to do the repair work on the rear of the car. Now, one driver I was talking about earlier who was most likely taking a bit of a slow but swift approach to the racing today, here is Mark Johnson. He's been involved in some sort of altercation or incident recently from what I'm hearing in my ear. We've got a replay queued up to explain, but after all the praise we heaped on him earlier on the fact he's making gradual progress, that progress has now turned to regress, and here is a replay which explains the story. So this was headed down towards Roush Corner. He was by himself at the time, so I get the feeling this might be a bit of a mistake under braking. Went all in, carried a lot of speed, and the rear of the car just stepped loose there at the apex. And well, I wonder if there was an accidental downshift, alternatively trying to get the throttle in. What was too early in the day, but either way, Mark Johnson, it's another spin, and indeed, I think right now there has been this adage, which is no matter how well Mark Johnson is doing, at some point in the race there's going to be a spin, and I've got to feel for him. I think we could all feel for him, ladies and gentlemen, for the fact that he's definitely one of those drivers out there. If it weren't for those little moments, he could definitely be a regular podium challenger. But still, the race isn't over. 23 minutes left to go, and you never know what you can do for track mouse racing. We've still got plenty of time out there, and deep down I know Mark Johnson's going to be thinking to himself right now, it's not about how you start this race, it's about how you finish it, and finish it on a high. Looking back to Lee Berridge, he's also thinking the same here as he chased after John Roberts, the two teammates together for Boosted Motorsport, and as they come in towards the right hander this time, no pit stops from them in terms of the second stops, but the idea is here they're trying to work together. They're trying to do a bit of fuel saving and just simply pushing each other along, and also have a bit of close and competitive friendly company. It's never going to go amiss, and it definitely has been a tale of woe for both, albeit John Roberts is one much more stand out in the fact that in qualifying things did not click together whatsoever, and he started 10th in class and what was 21st overall. Lee Berridge meanwhile started second in the AM class and the best part of 10th overall, and it was a spin coming out of turn number 3 in a close-knit battle with Simon Povey, albeit a spin of his own, what was his own accord, but Simon Povey got caught up in it, whereby Roberts in the end demoted himself all the way from the lead of the AM class, the fight for the lead of the AM class, down to here. But there's still more to come, is there, for Lee Berridge as he heads around. But as they head upwards, we look to Stuart Reynolds, and I do have a question being asked to me there in the YouTube chat. It is relevant, and we say hello there to Stephen Codford, who says, is Mark Johnson on wet tyres again? And if you're wondering why he's asking that question, well, the reason is, ladies and gentlemen, because in one of the recent rounds, the team at Trackmouse Racing put wet tyres on the car for Johnson when he was in such a commanding position in the race, and that's how he fell out of a potential podium finish, if not the chance of a win. And, well, I do believe, I've just double-checked the data, and I can confirm to you that Mark Johnson is on slicks today. They have not put wet tyres on the car so far. We can't rule it out in the final pit stop, but hopefully not, because we don't want to see any more misery come to the man in the McLaren number 44. But looking back here to Core versus Gall, right now for Alex Gall, he's still trying to find a way past Core. This is probably getting a little bit frustrating as we ride aboard with the 176, the chicane and Apex Mrs. driver. Staying close here, but backing off a little bit as he heads in towards turn 9. Is this going to be an early pit stop here for Alex Gall? Yes, it is. He decides, right, if I can't beat them on pace, I'm going to have to do it on strategy here, and that's all he can do at this point as he makes his way to the pit entry, and that might trigger a knee-jerk reaction. Will Edwards and Core now opt to come at the end of the 25th lap? We'll have to see, because Gall here will of course be going for the undercut, but normally if you do want to react to it, you need to come in immediately afterwards. That's the best way to counter it, because Gall will only get his out lap with which to try and jump them. But we keep an eye on the car in the pit lane. It's being serviced at the moment as expected, but it could be a short stop. He might try to go for the underfuel slightly in order to give himself every opportunity to get ahead and get clear in this pack. That might be the challenge. Well, it's 14.83 seconds to stop for Alex Gall as he begins to leave the pit lane, and in fact we do see him there on camera as he makes his way on out. But he comes out of the pits now, 20 minutes left on the clock, and he's bought himself plenty of clear track. He has got a 3-second gap to Heinz Mayer, he's got a 2-second gap to Mark Johnson behind, also the only other McLaren here. And right now for Alex Gall, I think he'll catch up to Mayer very gradually, and in doing so he may even get a little bit of a distant draft before Mayer comes into the pits, depending on when exactly the planned pit stop is for the Oris Racing Digital yellow machine. Speaking of Heinz Mayer, here he is on camera right now, running 4th in the AM class, doing a very good job to be fair, and he has gone under the radar quite a bit for this race. We have had difficulties for Paul Goffin, and in fact we didn't quite catch what's happened to Paul Goffin because he has been in the pit lane for some time now. I wonder if something's broken on the car. We are just checking with regards to any information that's come into race control. Nothing at the moment for Paul Goffin, so therefore we're not quite sure what's happened other than he's in the pit lane and they're working on the car. They're investigating an issue, but it looks like it's going to put him out of the race here. Because meanwhile Heinz Mayer, well, he's starting in 8th place now. He's up to 4th. Obviously he has benefited from the difficulties of some other drivers such as Johnson and also Lee Berridge. But say what you will, the one thing about Heinz Mayer is the results have got better and better as the season has gone on. Could he be on course not just for a top 5? Could he even perhaps sneak to the podium here? Let's wait and see. As Rob Sharp's into the pits, Mayer decides to come in as well. I think he's tied his strategy to whatever Rob Sharp is doing today, because this is now like for like between the two of them. And as he makes his way on down, Sharp's already being serviced, and I think Mayer here, realising the Aburis racing driver perhaps has an idea and he wants to copy it. But back to the front, we look to your pros, and Stuart Reynolds, well, he's 8.2 seconds clear now, and with such a gap, you would imagine that that is going to be a gap that's enough to win the race. Penttilä, Edwards and Core are still out. Meanwhile, Alex Gall, who has pitted, is carried on. So, 2nd through to 4th, they're going 2 laps longer than the chicane and Apex Mrs. driver from France. But right now, Gall in clear air, he is pumping in some big laps. I can tell you that his sectors right now, he is putting in sectors that are as good as, if not better, than 2nd through to 4th. He is going all for this. I think he realises this is the only way he may be able to get back to 2nd place or give himself the chance. And with Edwards and Core getting closer here, well, Penttilä has pulled away a little bit. I wonder if there's been a bit of a mistake for what has been Guy Edwards, because that gap has become very pronounced all of a sudden. Into the final corners they come, and Edwards is into the pits. Core, meanwhile, stays out, and Core's going to go 1 extra lap compared to all the leaders. He did that the first time around. He's doing it again. It's a good call here for Niels Core. His strategy is going to be to just simply stay ahead on what is the strategy, and therefore give himself the shortest run to the finish with regards to the number of laps he has to do, and he may give himself a car that feels a bit more comfortable. Heading onwards, coming out behind him there, that is none other than Kim Such, who is now a lap down, but will then gain the lap back when Core pits. Taylor Adams is still out there as Matias Penttilä comes out directly behind Adams. So intriguingly, as they head onwards, these two drivers right now, in fact, Tem coming out there, he has yet to take another pit stop. So Matias Penttilä, what on earth has happened there? Well, unless I've completely lost track of something, because Tem has dropped further back, and that's a bit of a surprise, no doubt about it. And in fact, well, I'm getting forgetful there, I do apologise. It is because of the contact with Alex Gull earlier along. Trying to keep track of everyone at the moment, and well, Tem fell out of my mind, and now he's back in there. I do remember immediately, ladies and gentlemen. And as Taylor Adams gets in behind him, these two working together at the moment, and Niels Core, your leader, well, can he make that work? After the pit stops, Alex Gull has got out ahead, it should be pointed out, ahead of Matias Penttilä and Guy Edwards, albeit Guy Edwards is 1.4 seconds back. Penttilä, meanwhile, is already 4/10 behind him, so Gull's done enough to jump two of them. Can he get all three? We are not too far away from waiting and seeing. But as Gull makes his way in towards turn number 6, the power horse quarter here is going to be one that he'll look to absolutely attack like he has every other lap here, if not a bit more aggressively. He knows he's got to absolutely nail these. That's why he's running all the way to the end of the curbing there, and you can see using every millimetre of track, he is doing it exactly right, as Niels Core has gone another lap. Core right now is going an incredible distance in this second stint. He had 14 laps before he came in for his first pit stop, and right now he's going to go at least another 14 before he makes his second one. As Gull here comes out of turn 9 into 10, he's bringing Penttilä with him, and I don't know whether Core's going to be safe here. I think he's going to fall in behind these two and perhaps be looking more towards Guy Edwards, unless he's been able to do an absolutely huge amount of fuel saving. Don't rule it out, to be fair, because anything is possible. Now, meanwhile, in the AM class, Rob Sharp, Chris Jennings and Heinz Mauer, they've all pitted. You can see them all here. Well, you see Rob Sharp initially. Chris Jennings will be in the rear of the camera shot. There he is. And then Heinz Mauer will arrive a little bit later. And in fact, we'll see him briefly. Here he is now. They've all pitted, whereas John Bailiff has stayed out. So Bailiff is going one more turn of the circuit. It'll be interesting to see how close Sharp is to Bailiff, because the pace of Bailiff would indicate that perhaps he should be comfortably ahead. But Sharp has surprised everybody so far as Carwardeen's into the pit lane. Mark Johnson, meanwhile, has had it go wrong again. Johnson's had it go round at turn number 10. The Trap Mouse racing car once again finds foul nature with the Red Bull ring, and the number 44 falls further. He's already taken both pit stops, and he's got a black flag for instant points for Mark Johnson. This race has become a nightmare now. It's gone from good to bad to worse to nightmare, and well, at this point, that's going to drop it all the way outside the top 10 of the AMs, I get the feeling. Meanwhile, for Niels Core, he comes into the pits. He absolutely blisters his way into the pit lane here. He has to in order to try and make sure he comes back out in second place, as Jake Cranstone will surely follow him shortly. Here is Cranstone with John Bailiff in tow, and Bailiff hadn't had the opportunity to run behind the Porsche driver for some time. I think that's going to help him out considerably. Stuart Reynolds, meanwhile, he makes his way past him. Such is the gap that Stuart Reynolds has had at the front of the field. He's already taken the lead back effectively, whereas the top three that were running yet to take a pit stop have only just really emerged into the pit lane. So Reynolds here makes his way on through, but where is Alex Gull? Here he is then, as he makes his way onwards. We look to the blimp camera. That's not the best of views, but you'll see why shortly. There's Niels Core leaving the pit lane. Where is Alex Gull? He's not on the bottom of the camera. There he is as they make the way in towards turn number 1. Core is going to get ahead, but now it's going to be a drag race all the way out towards turn number 3 as the fog and clouds descend here at the Red Bull Ring. I don't think there's any sign of rain coming today, but Niels Core right now has got back ahead. He's made it work. All the fuel saving that he put in the second stint when everybody else was fighting has gifted him the opportunity to move to second. Now, can he hold on for what will be his best result of the season? Indeed, this will be one he'd scream home about. There's no doubt about it. Stuart Reynolds has left this all behind. He's 6.2 seconds clear. And barring a mistake of his own doing, or something completely out of his hands, I think this is Reynolds' race to win. Well, the bigger question now is who's going to finish second? Will it be the championship leader of Gull? Will it be the man who's currently in that position of Niels Core to take his first ever second place this season? Or will Matias Penttilä be able to sweep his way between them? And don't rule out Guy Edwards either, who's 2.6 seconds back. And if they all start to fight, he will be there very quickly. And Matias Penttilä as well, he may have been involved in that altercation. However, he has caught up already. He is 5.5 seconds behind Edwards right now. That may be a long way away, but again, 12 minutes left on the clock. We know fighting around here costs the best part of 6 to 7 tenths a lap as a minimum. He could still be brought into this if there's plenty of fighting, so we'll have to wait and see. As to the AM class, John Bailiff has re-emerged ahead of Rob Sharp by the best part of 7.5 seconds, so Bailiff has been able to make this work, and I think running so closely behind Cranstone for so long has actually saved him so much fuel, because that last pit stop of Bailiff was only 13 seconds. If that is the shortest pit stop we've seen here today, Bailiff has absolutely nailed this on the strategy. He's just used Cranstone as his pace car all the way through. So therefore, Rob Sharp, he's going to have a taste of second place at at this rate. He won't have his taste of victory, but he will have his first run-out spot here if he sees this all the way home to the flag. And Chris Jennings will be not too far behind. It does mean that John Bailiff will essentially have one hand on the title going to Alton Park in the AM class, but the battle between Rob Sharp, Chris Jennings and Dennis Van Beelen, that is going to get incredibly tight for our Cesar Vlali, because we talked about him every so often. We haven't really shown him in this race. Here is Dennis Van Beelen. He's chasing after Gary Toole and he's still in 6th place. He's really been struggling here today, has the Ford Mustang driver. Things have just not come together, and compared to previous rounds, you do have to wonder for the Chicane and Apex Blisters driver. It's still going to be a good haul of points to the team. You have to wonder what exactly has gone wrong here, because this is not what we normally expect of him. We normally expect him to be contesting the top 3. He pulled off an absolute mammoth driver, Oschersleben, to come through the field to finish on the podium, but here right now there's just nothing there, and that's not to be rude about him, but this is a complete opposite trend of form, and he's trying to bring down Gary Toole if he can, and if he can make it happen, it would be a 5th place in class, as we've got a black flag for Lee Berridge. That's at instant points as well, and Mark Johnson, I believe, has had a bit of a moment at turn number 1 as well. It's all going wrong for 2 of the big names in the AM class who've shown a lot of pace here today. It continues to do so, and well, we do have to wonder that about black flags as well. And one thing we did briefly allude to earlier on today is that the Red Bull Ring is a circuit that's very aggressive on track limits. However, with those aggressive track limits, every time you go wide and pick up a track limit warning, that will be an instant point. Pick up enough of those, and of course you get a drive-through penalty for the 18 instant points that are permitted. Our drivers could be running quite close to the moment. Unfortunately, we don't have a tally of who's on what number of instant points, but do keep in mind it's 1 for an off-track, 2 for a loss of control, and it could be a maximum of 4 for a contact between 2 cars. And, well, we'd imagine that perhaps Alex Gull and Matias Penttilä are running at least in what would be the low 10s at the moment, based on the contact and taps we've seen and some off-tracks. That's my guesstimation, of course, ladies and gentlemen. I've got no data to back that up, and Nils Korn might be running with a lot more instant points available to him. So that's also a factor here. How aggressive can they choose to be? How loose with track limits can they choose to be at this point? That would be like real-life motorsport, because in the British Motorsport regulations, you have 3 track limits breaches, and on the 4th one, you get what is a post-race time penalty. And that's why they refer to them as tactical off-tracks in the end, because the professionals normally save those track limits warnings for towards the end of the race, or a critical moment when they need that little bit of extra pace, but where they don't breach them too much to be considered to have going off-track to get an advantage. It does come down to very picky margins. But as we do ride aboard here with the RD Simsport car of Matias Penttilä, not far to go in this race now for him. 9 minutes. He's looking at these. I think he was hoping for a 2nd place here today, but right now it's not come straight to him. If anything, it's gone very strongly to Nils Korn, and Penttilä's had to go the opposite way in the way it's gone, and now he's just continued to wait and watch. But Gull pulls away a little bit. Half a second is the gap as I head up towards another lap, and into turn 1 they go this time. But I think the Finn is just watching this and thinking, if it's going to happen, I need to be far enough back to be able to react to it, but close enough to be able to capitalise on it. It's a smart approach here, but of course the longer he waits, the less time of his own he'll have to be able to make some magic happen towards the very end of the race as they power their way up the hill. It's that braking zone for the hairpin they come, and Penttilä, you can see, closing up there. Something tells me he might be leaning off the brake pedal a bit more. He's just conserving the brakes and making sure not to run as hard on them or into the ABS zone. And in doing so, that's the power of staying further back, of course, is the fact he can then be a bit loose on the brakes and close up in the concertina effect without the fear of tapping the cars in front from behind. As we make our way down to the braking zone here for turn number 4, he's a bit closer this time and does have to back it off, but Core is definitely feeling the pressure. It's got runs out a bit wide there, pushing him hard. It's not long now before we might see another move, I suspect, because Core, for all the pace and performance he's put in today, he's not been able to shake off the pressure of the Chicane and Apex Blisters McLaren. All 3 of these cars in tip-top and notch condition as they make their way on towards turn number 9. But Gull here getting closer and closer with every apex of this lap. 2 tenths is the gap now as they get ready for Jochen corner, but he's not going to risk it here with 7.5 minutes left on the clock. But sometime soon, surely a move's got to be coming. But I think he's predicated on the idea he only wants to make the move once, and he wants to make it exactly when it matters most, when he can perfect the move as they roar the way on to the next lap. Staying on board with the 176 for the chicane and Apex Business team now. At this point, well, the lap times are all in the high 36s. 36.7 for Core, 36.8 for Gull, the same for Penttilä. 37.3 for Edwards, whose pace has fallen off to a degree. And in fact, Matias Penttilä is closing up on him little by little of a 36.8. Taylor Adams, meanwhile, just set a personal best of 36.7. So Edwards might be in danger here of losing fourth place to Tem with the laps remaining. We'll have to see, because that gap has come down at 6 tenths over the last 2 laps. Again, that is a margin right now, unless it's just Edwards backing off and saving some fuel and protecting the car a little bit. The goal here just can't seem to find a response to this BMW of Core in front. And he makes way into that braking zone at 4, turn number 4. Core goes a bit deep there on the tighter line as well. Core is definitely struggling with front left tyre temperatures, I would say, because the fact that the body language of the car is showing that he's having to point it at the apex rather than let it naturally coast to the apex would suggest that essentially the car's not reacting the way he wants it to, and instead what he's having to do now is be a little bit forceful with his lines to get the car to bite the apex. Goal here, just staying in the draft as they make their way through turn 8. See Gull being able to be much more fluid with his corners, albeit they're not rushing to get the car for the curbing at turn number 8, and that's the confidence he has in the machine. But from them, we then go back to Mark Johnson here as he makes his way up the hill in towards turn number 1. He's on the back of Ryan Penny, and it's a spin for Johnson again. Oh, goodness me. And for Mark Johnson right now, this race really is going from good to bad to worse, and the car's towed to the pit lane there. And I get the feeling right now that for Mark Johnson, the frustration may just have bubbled over a little bit. And again, it's such a shame to see what was looking to be such a strong race for him just gradually descend into difficulties as time has gone on. Meanwhile, coming from John Bailiff, that was there, chased after Drake Cranstone still for 10th place overall. The AM leader on the back of the 10th place Pro Trial. We look to Ben Idris Abdullahi, who has a slowdown penalty here for track limits at turn number 9 as he makes way out of turn number 1. Well, Simon Povey right now riding the back of him here, and if Povey's not aware of it right now, in the fact that there's a slowdown there for Idris Abdullahi, he may essentially not be able to capitalise on it as they head up towards turn number 3. Well, we look for the move here. Yes, he does. Povey sees the writing on the wall when he says, right, I'm going to take this. And Idris Abdullahi burns that slowdown. The Mustang now will get the power back down, essentially perfecting the art of burning it before the apex of turn number 3. And now he can go full throttle out the corner and chase back after Povey. So here comes Idris Abdullahi to take the place back if he can for Satellite Racing. Looks to the inside, but it's not enough there, and he doesn't want to risk lunging it under braking. As they come out of that corner, I don't think it's going to be long before he's going to think about a potential move. As we look back to Lee Berridge, who fights with Oliver Carwadine after Berridge lost the place to Carwadine as a result of a mistake a few laps ago. And right now for Lee Berridge, he'd just like to try and make amends here and grab that 9th place back in the AM class. But I think it's going to be easier said than done. Carwadine, I think, having got himself into a good move and groove with that BMW M4 Evo. And Berridge, meanwhile, I think is really having to walk on eggshells with the car in terms of the fact the car's been round a few times now and those tyres were looking precariously worn. But from them, we make our way back to Stuart Reynolds as he tucks into the draft here of Kim Such. And Such, I think, trying to respect the blue flags and stay off the racing line. I think Reynolds is saying to him, no, please, I want the fastest lap. And then he flashes lights there to say, okay, I'm coming through now, thank you. And as he makes his way onwards, I think he wants that bonus point for putting himself to the fastest lap in this race. And the fastest lap at the moment is owned, as I double check these statistics here, it is a 36.28 as owned by Alex Giles, the nearest 100th. So Reynolds does not have it because he's on a 36.32. However, with the tyres as worn as they are, I think trying to find what will be that fastest lap at this point, he's going to need a big slipstream to do it. So I don't think the tyres are going to give him the pace he wants. But coming back to the fight for second, meanwhile, well, as Reynolds looks to chase down an extra point if he can, Niels Core, Alex Gull and Matias Penttilä all chased each other for this second place. And Core still there. Right now, 3 minutes left to go. This pack has not changed. Guy Edwards has fallen away from it to 5.5 seconds now. So it definitely is a three-way fight for the run-up spot on the podium and 3rd place with it. But Core here heading in towards the left-hander turn number 7. And you can see Gull just getting closer and closer there, just taking those little sneak peeks on every corner as Penttilä just watches from behind. And here comes the RD Simsport driver. He's going to go for the move into Yocker Rib Bend. It's unconventional, but this is where he wants to mount the pressure. He's decided it's time to go for it. Gull runs out wide there, and as he rejoins, it's a slowdown for Gull as a result of giving the space there to Penttilä. So Pentillä's done the damage he needs to, but the the problem is now the fact that Goal will make his way upwards towards turn number 1. When can he burn the slowdown? Well, he's going to have to burn it sooner rather than later. And Niels Core now is going to be given this space for free, at least for a lap, as Penttilä goes up the inside there of the apex and chicane misses driver, but Goal immediately clears the slowdown penalty. And now here he comes back at him. Goal's playing the game here and he's playing it smart. If he's not going to win this race, he's definitely going to make sure he's on the podium with everything he can. And heading up the hill, he's in the draft, but Penttilä puts the car on the racing line. Goal thinks about it, but then thinks again. And I think right now he wants to give it at least one more lap. He wants to see whether they can get close enough to corner, bring the fight for second place back into their hands, as otherwise if he starts fighting with Penttilä now, he guarantees it is a fight for third place that becomes the centre of the attention in this top pack. Off camera, we've had a moment for Gary Toole, which we are going to briefly cut to as he's dropped down to what is 6th place in the AM class. Here's a quick replay. So this was Toole by himself at the time, running in 5th, with Dennis Van Beelen gradually approaching him into turn number 9, carried a lot of speed in the rear of the car, just sliding loose on him. And Van Beelen in the end said, thank you very much. But as Toole got it back together, well, frustrated him up there, no doubt about it for the 207 Porsche driver. And indeed, what was looking to be a comfortable fifth place finish in the AM classes now turned into a settle for 6th moment. But as we come back to your live racing, well, here is Penttilä. Goal is 3 tenths behind him, but they have got Niels Core within 8 tenths here. There might be some method in this as we've got less than a minute to go, and your race leader of Stuart Reynolds goes on to a final lap here at the Red Bull Ring in our penultimate round of the season. He roars across that line with a 7-second gap. He doesn't need to do anything special here. That fastest lap is not coming his way, unfortunately for him, because he won't have anybody to work with and he hasn't got the life in the car anymore. But Core is trying to hold on for his best result of the season, with Penttilä and Goal watching right behind and looking now towards either fighting each other or fighting the man in second. There's a little bit of traffic in front of them. That is Kim Sarch, who they'll gain on in the run-up towards AMSAG hairpin, and then it'll be all about the run down towards Roush Corner. Can they clear him before them? Can Core clear him in particular? Or will he find that traffic does play against him for the remainder of the race? We will see as we then look back to Simon Povey versus Idris Abdullahi as they head up the hill. And Povey in the Porsche there, the Red Bull liveried machine, versus the Satellite Racing Mustang. And, well, Povey's going to look for the move here. He's going to go all the way. Hey, it's going to be Idris Abdullahi looking for the move here, I should say. He tries to squeeze his way in, but the small and very nimble Porsche there just simply outbrakes its rival to the corner, and that's going to keep him comfortably ahead. But back to the fight for second we come. Core, Penttilä and Goal here all together as we've had a toe to the pits for Gary Toole. He had a black flag for another spin. That would have been instant points and a drive-through penalty, and Toole's race has come to an abrupt close as Povey, he's into the gravel there. We won't be able to get a replay of that because it's too late now as our leader's carried home. But Simon Povey there and Idris Abdullahi, I think, have had a bit of a coming together. But meanwhile, as Stuart Reynolds makes his way down through turn number 9, well, many were wondering after Oschersleben, could he make it 3 in a row? Could he level the playing field before the championship finale? The answer is yes, he can, because Fury says what Stuart Reynolds becomes a 3-time winner here at the Red Bull Ring for the season, ahead of Niels Core, who brings home second place, his best result of the season overall. And it's Matias Penttilä who rounds off the podium with Alex Goal for chicane at Apex misses the championship leader, seeing 4th place today, and championship control slip out of his hands. Guy Edwards takes 5th ahead of Matthias Tem, with Taylor Adams in 7th ahead of Ben Idris Abdullahi, who has a black flag, and that will be a drive-through penalty he can't serve, and it will be a post-race time penalty for instant points that will send him a long way down the order in the end, ahead of Simon Povey on the road at least, with Povey taking 9th. And then Jake Cranstone, oh goodness me, those words between Povey and Idris Abdullahi there. Jake Cranstone will take 10th place, and then it will be John Bailiff who is going to be your winner in the AM class, and with it, a 4-time winner in the AMs now. And for John Bailiff, he's not your crowned champion in the AM class, he is not your champion-elect, but he is a driver with one hand on the title, with Rob Sharp taking home 2nd place in the AM class, his best result of the season. I wonder if we'll hear from him after the racing stakes. He'll be absolutely ecstatic about that. And then it's Chris Jennings who rounds off the AM podium with 3rd place in class in a brilliant drive there, and keeping his hunt for 2nd place of the championship truly alive in what is going to be a titanic battle for second between him, Dennis Van Beelen and Rob Sharp. Heinzmaier, season best performance there, 4th place and 14th overall. He'll be pleased with that. Dennis Van Beelen was 5th place in class and 15th overall behind. And then John Roberts in the end for Boosted Motorsport, somehow making it to 6th place in the AM class. I don't think he's going to quite believe it either that he's finished that high up, given how the race went. And then Ryan Penny, well, the Oris Race Digital Red driver, he'll take 7th in AM ahead of Lee Berridge, with Oliver Carwadine in 9th in class, 19th overall, and then it'll be Kim Such, a lap down, who will be classified in 20th ahead of Giles Gardner and Andy Marsden. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, my goodness, what a race it was. And we need to take a look back quickly at what happened to Idris Abdullahi versus Simon Povey. Here was the replay of their battle then coming down towards turn number 4, and perhaps this explains what happened after they crossed the finish line. It was Idris Abdullahi on the inside, Povey turned in, and Idris Abdullahi came in too strong there and did not get the car stopped in time, and I think Povey was not too pleased about that, and well, understanding that might be why what we saw on the start finish line after they finished. But Idris Abdullahi, for that contact, had got a black flag, and that was a drive-through penalty, so Povey will get the place back. But I think in the heat of the moment there, he may not have realised that. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we come back to your live screens, and as our drivers parking up, let's take a look at those race results subject to any Stewart's inquiries. So as our results appear on screen, we start off with the overall results as always for round number 7 of season 7 of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge, as brought to you on iRacing and powered by Oris Digital. And as we can see, Stuart Reynolds makes himself a 3-time winner this season, and for the Fury Sim Sport, that's exactly the result he needed to kick off his 2026, and with it bring himself closer to the battle in the title fight with Alex Gall, heading into our season finale in 2 weeks' time at Alton Park. 7 seconds behind, it was Neil's call there for Satellite Racing, the BMW driver. Landed his best result of the season and having to work hard for it, but all the fuel saving he put together in the second stint is what enabled him to take that spot and hold on. Matias Penttilä, the Finnish driver from RD Simsport, completed your top 3 behind the German, and in the end it was the Frenchman of Alex Gall for Chicane and Apex Misses, your championship leader, who today landed some good points, but they're not the points he wanted. He'll still be the championship leader going into the season finale, I do believe, with some mental maths in hand, but his advantage of 9 points, it will have been slashed. 5th place, Guy Edwards there. He looked ferocious in the early stage of the race, but gradually fell off as the race went on. But still credit to him for a solid top 5 performance ahead of Matthias Tem. And the Fury Simsport driver will be a little bit upset. He couldn't quite make it a podium after the brief tap to his rear end into turn 1 by Alex Gall. How I'm sure all will be forgiven after they've got out the cars. And Tem will know today that it definitely was a big result for the Fury Simsport team, if not a big result for him on a personal level. Taylor Adams took 7th there for Regenta Sim Racing in a bit of an anonymous race, although he put pressure on Tem towards the end. But he was ahead of Simon Povey there, the F-Tech Racing driver, who enjoyed spending a lot of time battling with the AM drivers at the front of the AM field. And the same could be said for the Masters of Torque Porsche of Jake Cranstone, who finished in 9th. John Bailiff, your AM winner, now a 4-time class winner. And the winner of Bennett Racing driver will extend his championship lead and put himself in a commanding position going to Alton Park to take the first ever AM crown. He took 10th place overall ahead of best of the rest, Rob Sharp, who was 11th on the overall road. But for the Ouroboros Racing driver, that's the 2nd place in AM class result that's critical to his campaign. Chris Jennings took 12th, round off the AM podium there for Axis Simsports, and another solid drive and another podium to his name, ahead of Heinz Mayer, who took 13th place in the end, promoted there as a result of the post-race time penalty for Ben Idris Abdullahi, and a season best result at that for the Oris Racing yellow driver. Dennis Van Beelen was 14th for Chicane and Apex Misses in a bit of a difficult race today, and Idris Abdullahi there in 15th place, the Satellite Racing driver having a frustrating end to the race, and that black flag really capping it off. John Roberts was 16th ahead of Ryan Penny, with Lee Berridge and Oliver Carwood-Dean completing your lead lap finishers in 19th place. And behind the Oris Racing yellow driver was his sister team driver of Kim Such Oris Racing red, who was a lap down. And the same could be said in terms of laps down for Giles Gardner, who was 12th ahead of Gary Toll, who was 2 laps down. The same for Andy Marsden. And then Mark Johnson, your last classified finisher, in 24th place after his 4th and final spin for Trackmouse Racing. It was sadly retirements for both Paul Goffin and Matt Slate with technical issues to their cars, but that was your overall finishing positions, ladies and gentlemen, and now it becomes the AM finishing positions. Meanwhile, let's take a look at those for the AM Championship credentials, and here we can see the maximum points go to John Bailiff, who didn't just take the win, but also took the fastest lap over the race distance to win it up in it racing. He was 8.1 seconds clear in the end of Rob Sharp for Ouroboros Racing, who used strategy today to make sure he took that 2nd place spot, and well done to him for creeping on through. Head of Chris Jennings for Axis Simsports, who in the end will be wondering how he's been leapfrogged to the 2nd spot on the podium, but still a podium it is for him. Behind the 22 driver, it was the 222 of Heinz Mayer for Oris Racing Yellow, who delivered his best result of the season there in class as well to take that 4th place. And 6 seconds behind Chris Jennings. I wonder if he fancies a shot at the podium at Alton Park, given the confidence he's bringing to the table. He was ahead of Dennis Van Biel in the end by 9 seconds, with the chicane and apex misses driver missing out and not really being able to put things together over the distance. John Roberts took 6th place there for Boosted Motorsport in a frustrating race for the team, both for him and his teammate Lee Berridge, but between the two of them was Ryan Penny in 7th place at Oris Racing Red. Lee Berridge was 8th, and then Oliver Carwadine took 9th place, Oris Racing Yellow, behind the driver who at one point was leading the race, but unfortunately was not to be, whereas for Carwadine, it was another solid showing. It was a lap down for Kim Such in 10th, ahead of Giles Gardner, and then we did see in 12th place Gary Toole, who was 2 laps down, the same as Andy Marsden in 13th for SRM Black, and then from there it was Track Mouse Racing's Mark Johnson who was your last finisher, and you had your non-finisher in 15th there at Paul Goffin for SRM Black. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our rundown of the provisional results, and it concludes all of our races here at the Red Bull Ring. But what it doesn't conclude is this broadcast, of course, because coming up in approximately 5 minutes' time, we're going to be grabbing a word or two with our volunteer driver interviewees. Don't go anywhere. You want to miss these post-round interviews and hear what our drivers had to say about a brilliant return to the racing here in what was round number 7 of Season 7 of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to get our interviews underway, and who better to start off our interviews with than none other than our race winner from today, as he joins me now in the interview room. It is none other than Stuart Reynolds. Good evening to you, Stuart, and well, I do have to ask you, how does it feel to know that you've now won 3 races overall in a row, and your championship charge is almost on level footing with Alex Gall going to Alton Park in 2 weeks' time?
Pretty ecstatic, to be fair. I'm not really good round Red Bull Ring, so it's come as a bit of a surprise, to be honest. I was expecting Alex to just run away with that one, but I think he was struggling with that McLaren. So,
Well, a surprise perhaps, but still, sometimes you have to grab those surprises and take control of them, and you did exactly that at the start of the race. But let's dial it back a little bit and talk about qualifying and perhaps your anticipated difficulties with the Red Bull Ring. Why do you say it's a circuit that perhaps you haven't clicked with?
I don't know, I just don't really race round it, to be fair. It's a track I tend to avoid. But with qualifying, I saw I was only, like 200ths of a second off of Alex. I thought I could probably get pole, and I was on for a good lap, but an AM got in the way of my final lap and ruined it. So it is what it is.
Oh, unfortunate, but the fact you showed yourself that you had the pace in qualifying, then going into the race, I mean, we saw a classic start from Alex Gall to really try to catch the field by surprise, and it looked as though into turn 1 you've been caught out a little bit, but come turn number 3, it was glistening on the car. You were absolutely going for it. Was there a bit of a mentality of it's either now or never?
Yeah, because the last 2 races I've generally followed Alex, and I thought this time, I'm just going to send it this time. I'm going to go for the, take the lead straight away and see if I can control the field for a change.
Well, you successfully made the move happen and started to control the field, but then intriguingly, of course, your teammate, Matias Penttilä, who's returned to the grid as of this round, we saw him get involved in the battle. And was there perhaps a grin on your face when you saw he had managed to get ahead of Alex?
yeah, it was a little bit of a grin on my face, but it was just a shame that Alex, unfortunately, did take Matias out, because I think they would have had a very good race between themselves. I think Alex just missed his braking point ever so slightly, and it just caused an accident. But yeah, when I saw that Alex was behind Matias, I was working out in my head how far in the championship I was going to catch him up by.
Oh, well, spending a good portion of the race doing some mental mathematics, but also, I suspect, focusing on delivering lap after lap. And just off the back end of that, I mean, we've seen you in the races this season have to contend with other drivers around you, perhaps none more so than your close rival of Matias Penttilä round after round. But the fact this is really the first round where you've been by yourself for the majority of the race, how do you not lose concentration?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I started to lose it about midway, and then I managed to bring myself back. It's just getting in a groove and just staying in that groove is quite difficult sometimes. But knowing that I might be leading the championship after winning, it just kind of gave me the mentality to keep going.
Oh, well, there's always a prize there at the end of the road, and I think that's the right approach to take, like you say, just keeping an eye on the big prize, which is the championship crown. And as the race went on, of course, a classic 2-stop strategy here. Did you run the race to your planned strategy, or did you change it given the commanding lead you gradually had?
I'll be honest with you, I didn't have a strategy in mind. I did no practice for this event whatsoever. Really, I should be in bed by now, but never mind. Yeah, just go until the fuel runs out, basically.
Oh, fair play. Well, sometimes the best plan is no plan, and improvise as you go. And conscious that you perhaps need to get to bed, we won't keep you too much longer. Of course, 2 weeks from now, our season finale, and you might be in the championship going into it. We head to Alton Park. It's all to play for. What can we expect from you there?
I love Alton Park, so hopefully I'll have a good race there. I did do a little bit of practice the other night, and the Merc's not that good, so I'm going to have to practice a little bit more, I reckon.
Well, they do say practice makes perfect, and we look forward to seeing whether you can reap the rewards of your practice in the weeks to come. But just as we get ready to let you go, Stuart, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or thank you to?
Fury Sim Sport and their title sponsor, Abruzzi. I think that's it. I think that's all our sponsors. So
Oh, no worries. We'll leave it there, Stuart. Congratulations on becoming a three-time winner and 3 in the row for yourself overall. You've definitely kept things interesting going all the way to the season finale in 2 weeks' time at Alton Park. And well, until then, have a great rest of your evening, and we'll see you in round 8.
Thank you, Paul. See you later.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Stuart Reynolds, who I think right now is gradually absorbing the enormity of what has transpired here today, in the fact that, as we see in the replay pictures, initially he was able to take the lead off of Alex Garn, really taking that mentality today of at a circuit which he's not normally raced at, and he doesn't feel as comfortable with as other circuits, that if he's going to take the lead of this race, he needs to do it early, and he could draw upon the knowledge he picked up from the late stages of the qualifying, where if it were not for his final lap being obstructed perhaps by another driver, in his opinion, he would have been able to put himself on pole. So that confidence he had to take into the race, he did exactly that, and that's how he took the lead, and eventually when his teammate was able to find a way past Alex Garl, that's when he could start to open up that gap. It was unfortunate. We did see Matias Penttilä end up in that instant with Alex Garl, and as a result, Fury Simsport could perhaps not make the 1-2 they were looking for today, but still, on a selfish level, perhaps for Stuart Reynolds, this is the result he exactly needed, and he may, in fact, I think he is correct, he may now be your provisional championship leader going into the season finale, and as a result, you can imagine that right now, his focus of that practice for Alton Park is going to be delivering lap after lap until he can't get it wrong and make sure that championship crown falls into his hands. But will he be able to do it? We'll see then, as we now get ready for a second interview. We'll be back very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we've heard from a driver in the Pro class, so what better thing to do now than hear from a driver in the AM class? But it's not just any driver who's joining me in the interview room, it's Rob Sharp from Aburius Racing. Good evening to you, Rob, and well, allow me to firstly say congratulations on your best result of the season. Second place in class, 11th overall. You must be absolutely chuffed with that one.
Yeah, I am, absolutely. My aim was just to try and, just not have any incidents, so it was, I was really pleased with second. I don't know quite how that happened.
Well, if you don't quite know how it happened, we'll try and piece it together. But before we get to there, let's talk a little bit about qualifying. 14th overall, 4th in class, a very close qualifying session, perhaps the closest we've seen it this season. How did you figure the session? Were you happy with your performance, or do you think there was a bit left on the table?
I was really happy with that. I wanted to be, that's kind of where I thought I would, on a good day, that's where I could get to. So 4th in class, with alongside people like Gary, no, that was great. I don't think, there was maybe a couple of 10s here and there if I'd done a perfect lap, but I couldn't do that.
Well, that's absolutely fair. Well, rather than chase perfection, you chased your way into the race. And speaking of the start of the race, for the best part of the opening 10 minutes, we did see effectively first all the way through to what was around 17th place, separated by only really a second at most from car to car. Did it feel a bit processional, the opening race, or was that all perhaps part of the plan, just to run in the tail of the next car along?
Yeah, I was reasonably happy to do that. It was just a little bit too close for comfort at times. When you're running in a procession, you can be a victim of an incident ahead. Someone goes slow or whatever, before you know it, you're caught up. But it was okay. It was fine. It kind of, we can see on the screen there, it kind of suited me just following closely and seeing whether Gary would make a mistake, and try and overtake him eventually.
Now, on making overtakes, of course, where it was with pro drivers or AM drivers, the Porsche, we know it's got a lot of performance on the brakes, but perhaps not on the straights. Did you feel as though it was really a lap of two halves, where on the first half of the lap with all the straights, you couldn't really do much, you were more vulnerable, but then on the second half of the lap, that's where you had the opportunities arise?
Oh, I don't know. No, I don't think so. Not for me, because a lot of the corners on this track I have difficulty with. I can't tell you how many times I've spun. So I tend to try and just tiptoe through it. So I didn't really find that. I found that I made quite a bit of time up through turn 1 and turn 2 actually. So maybe I lost a little bit on the straights, but it was those first 2 turns that I think I made my time up, and then I certainly lost it on the last 2. So yeah, they're just swings and roundabouts, I guess.
Oh, well, swings and roundabouts with regards to the lap, but let's talk a little bit about strategy then, because one thing you absolutely nailed today was coming into the pits at the right time to move you forward. First pit stop you made, as we see some footage of you battling with Mark Johnson, we saw you move all the way up into what was essentially the fight for the podium spot, and in the second pit stop, you'd made your way into second. Could you quite believe it each time you came out the pits?
Not at all. I had no clue that was going to happen. I mean, I went into the pits early that first stop because I had to. I wasn't fuel saving. I know a lot of people must have been fuel saving quite hard in times. I didn't do that at all. I just pedaled to the metal, and I just pitted when I had to. So I was quite surprised that I came out and made up a few places on the first stop, and then actually jumped Chris for the second one at the second one. Incredible.
Oh, indeed. I mean, an incredible result for yourself. And when we did see you come out in second for the final stint, of course, a little bit of drama as well had played out for some of the other drivers, such as, for example, Lee Berridge. But you got to be in the right place to take advantage of it. The last few laps, we saw you by yourself out there running in second. Couldn't quite catch up to John Bailiff, but safe from Chris Jennings. Take us through the last lap, perhaps, and just that feeling of taking your best result of the season.
Oh, it's just great. Of course, you're on tenterhooks. You don't want to make a mistake and blow it, spin at the last corner or something. So no, it was quite good. When I came out after the second stop, I think Chris was about 1.6 behind me. But then I managed to grow the gap, which I didn't expect to be able to do because Chris is very quick, and he's ahead of me in the championship. So when I think I ended up with a 5-second gap, I think he'd slackened off the last few laps. So. No, it was just trying to cruise through that last lap and not quite believing second place, but I'll take it.
Oh, indeed. Well, you might not quite believe it, but you'll take it like you say. And that means going into our season finale, John Bailiff may have one hand on the title, but it's all to play for second place now between yourself, Chris Jennings, and also Dennis Van Beelen. So what can we expect from you at Alton Park?
Panic. I think you wouldn't. Well, I don't know. We'll just have to see. Alton Park's a tricky track. It's my local track. I've driven around it in real life a few times, but I don't think that really counts. Not compared to all this stuff. And it's very narrow, of course. So it's difficult to overtake. So my strategy there will be just to try and drive clean and keep within myself, and we'll just see where we finish. I'm not, I think, yeah, that's it, really.
Oh, absolutely fair, but at the same time, a good way to approach it, and we look forward to seeing what you can do to potentially take second place in the championship when all the dust settles at Alton Park. But just before we do let you go, Rob, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to on the broadcast tonight?
Well, just my wife, my two sons, my brother Stuart. So they may well watch this one. So I'm not sure they have been watching it, but you never know. So they obviously support me. So that'd be great.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Rob, with that, we'll leave it there. Congratulations once again on a season best performance. A well-deserved second place, no doubt about it, and one that could just very much set you up for second place success in the championship of the AMS at the end of the season. We'll see you in 2 weeks at Alton Park to see whether you can bring that dream to life. But until then, my friend, have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks very much, Paul. Bye-bye.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, for a very happy but also very surprised Rob Sharp. And I do love that, how you describe it, that he couldn't quite believe it. And he doesn't know how it had happened. Well, in the end, I think we can put it down to the fact that with the attitude he explained in terms of his approach to lap and just not wanting to make any mistakes and not push himself too far, I think his approach really of just driving within his limits has rewarded him well today, because as whereas others were making mistakes or perhaps just pushing a bit too extreme, for Rob Sharp in a Porsche Cayman that definitely looks as though it's absolutely running on rails, it's all down to the driver just nailing lap after lap. And that's how he picked up his maiden podium of the season earlier on over the course of the rounds, and that's now how he's picked up his maiden second place. And I do wonder if he takes that logic to Alton Park, a circuit that is not forgiving when you get it wrong there, whether Rob Sharp may just be able to take that second place off of Chris Jennings in the championship. There's a good chance of it, but then again, Jennings might also have some aces up his sleeve. It'll be intriguing to see when we make our way there 2 weeks from today. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've got one more interview to come. Who is it going to be with? Well, we'll be back in about 20 seconds to find out. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we come to our final interview of the evening, and joining me now in the interview room is Niels Core from Satellite Racing. Niels, good evening to you, and what a race, and congratulations on taking your first second place overall of the season. You must be pleased with that one, because you had to work hard for it.
Oh yeah, definitely. There was obviously also a bit luck involved in that, but yeah, I just did my best and it paid off.
Oh, 100%. And coming into this round, we have seen you gradually getting closer and closer to the pace setters at the very front of the field. But from your perspective, qualifying, we saw you take 5th on the grid. It looked very close throughout the session. You even were provisional pole sitter at one point. Were you happy with your qualifying session?
It was alright. Obviously, with this being a draft track, it was pretty tight, and just a few tenths could have gained you a few spots. I was also once on a lap where, or actually 2 times, where I could have probably jumped a bit higher up, but yeah, the off tracks are also a bit of an issue for this track, so I didn't manage to do it, but was still an alright lap in the end.
Now, just on that, it's interesting you should mention the off-tracks. We know the Red Bull Ring, very aggressive track limits around here, and you only have 18 instant points before you do pick up a drive-through penalty that nobody wants to pick up. In the race, we saw you spend a lot of time, whether it was in the long line of cars at the start of the race, or even in the second stint, you seemed to spend a lot of time keeping the car very much on the black stuff rather than running out wide. Was that all part of the plan? I know it's a silly question, but you looked as though you were playing everything for, I'm just going to let hell loose on the final stint when it matters most.
That's pretty much exactly what I was planning on doing. I basically just decided to, after I had a bit of an issue with the rear of the car in the first 2 laps and lost the position, I decided to just save as much fuel as I could while still staying just about in the draft, and also trying to keep the incident points as minimal as possible so I could use them in the end.
Well, you definitely saved up those instant points well, but what you'd also saved very well in that second stint in particular was the fuel to enable you to leap ahead. You had one of the shortest pit stops of everybody in that leading group in the fight for second. Were you expecting to come out in second place, or was that a bit of a shock?
As I was like running behind that group before pitting, I totally expected to be there. So yeah, that was pretty much the plan I had from the beginning of the race, and then yeah, I just had to somehow keep Alex behind me, which is usually not that easy. But luckily for me, the McLaren did seem to have a bit of an issue with his with its top speed, so I managed to stay ahead quite well.
Oh, indeed. Despite the intense pressure, like you say, you're able to keep Alex Gall's McLaren behind, and towards the very end we did see Matias Penttilä look for the move and make it for 3rd place. Was there perhaps a little bit of a smile coming on your face at the fact you saw them start to fight over 3rd and you were given some breathing room?
As all of the races so far, I've been in voice chat with Alex as well, so it was definitely quite an enjoyable experience, because he was also always the flaps before already going like, the rocket is coming from behind, because he was just getting so much better exits out of some of the corners. And when I saw them actually getting side by side, I knew, okay, now I got some room to breathe again.
Oh, fair play. Well, the battle of the rocket versus the nimble McLaren gave you some breathing room and enabled you to make sure you could bring home an absolutely brilliant second place. And what it does mean now, of course, is that in the championship fight, you're definitely potentially in with a shout of 3rd place in the championship in the battle of Matias Penttilä in our season finale at Alton Park. Do you fancy your chances to take 3rd come the final checker flag?
Well, I would definitely like to get on the podium in the end, so I will do my best. Although I also have to admit already that last track on the calendar is usually not one of my strong ones, so I will probably have to have some luck.
Well, fair play. Alton Park is a challenging one, but then again, some luck may come your way. And just before we do get ready to let you go, Niels, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast tonight?
Yeah, big shout out to Satellite Racing, all the guys who I'm racing with all the time. And also, I guess a good shout out to Alex for basically handing me that second place in the end by what he has done the whole race. May it be good or bad.
Well, Niels, we'll leave it there, but thank you for joining me in the interview room. Congratulations once again on your season best performance of second place. We look forward to seeing whether you can match it, perhaps even surpass it at Alton Park in the hunt for third in the championship. But until then, have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you very much, Paul. See ya.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Niels Core, the satellite racing driver in the end enjoying a solid race, but in his own words, happy with the qualifying session, expected it to be close given the nature of the circuit, and really put the priority on the race. And his goal throughout the entirety of it was just to simply make sure he stayed out of trouble, avoided picking up the track limit penalty points, and in turn save the fuel. And we saw that so much so in the second stint, where he stayed behind the big battle for second place and then leapt ahead of it, where everybody else was so engrossed in fighting each other, he was already thinking the best part of 20 minutes ahead. Grateful for the fact that in the end, Matias Penttilä and Alex Gall went toe-to-toe for third and gave Niels the opportunity to secure that second. And talking out there, being in the same voice chat as Alex Gall, might have been a bit animated in there, but all's fun in love and war, as they say, and I can imagine that Alex Gall was enjoying himself battling with the RD Sim Sport Mercedes Rocket, but also Niels Core was a rocket of his own, to be fair, and he's definitely taken lift off in the chase for third place in the overall Drivers' Championship. But will he be able to take it off of Matias Penttilä when all is said and done? We'll have to see at Alton Park 2 weeks from now, indeed at a circuit where he doesn't have perhaps as much fun as others. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll leave it there for our interviews, and a huge thank you to all three of our interviewees this evening. We first off heard from our pro class winner today, and now three-time winner, Fury Sim Sports' Stuart Reynolds, who started second and took the victory. We then heard from your AM podium finisher, his first second place in AM of the season, his best result of the season as well, both overall and in class. It was Rob Sharp for Ouroboros Racing. And then we just heard from Satellite Racing's Niels Core, who definitely enjoyed himself out there today, and in the end used smarts and strategy to move from 5th to 2nd, with a little bit of luck as well, but he definitely did all the hard work along the road to success. Well done to all three of them on their performances, and a huge thank you to them all for joining me in the interview room. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about the Sim Racing Magazine community, perhaps getting on the grid for a future season of racing or one of our one-off events, well, for all that and more, we definitely recommend you join our official Discord. Invite link available on screen there. Indeed, it's the best place to go to. You can get in touch with all the drivers, both old, new and current, and also you can speak to the admins there, and there's never been a more friendly place in the Sim Racing world than other than the Sim Racing Magazine community. We'd also like to take a moment to firstly say a big thank you to our series sponsor. That is, of course, Oris Digital. Small teams can make a huge impact in the digital marketing and e-commerce space, and Oris Digital knows that best. With 20 years of collective experience in growing businesses through online marketing channels via the provision of services including affiliate management, Amazon marketing, and digital strategy, Oris Digital delivers tangible results to its clients. If you'd like to know more about how Oris Digital can help grow your business, be sure to head to their website today at www.oris.digital. We'd also like to take a moment with that to give a shout out to our series partner, and that is Ouroboros Watch. One of our drivers, we heard from him earlier this evening, Rob Sharp, runs Ouroboros Watch, which designs and markets watch faces for smartwatches running Google's Wear operating system known as Google Wear OS. This SRM-themed watch face is, as of Christmas Eve 2025, as you can see it on screen, now available on the Google Play Store by just searching for GT4C, just exactly those characters. It features a pit board that includes your race position, which improves as you near your step target for the day, a racetrack with selectable colours for each sector, and the trademark SRM branding along with other useful information such as heart rate, so you can manage your excitement level in the next Sim Racing Magazine race, whether you're on the grid or spectated it. If you'd like to know more about Ouroboros Watch's watch faces for smartwatches, why not head to their website at www.ouroboros.com today. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we've got time for today. And now we look ahead to 2 weeks' time. And when we arrive at our final circuit, it will be Alton Park. And in the Cheshire countryside in the northwest of England, that is where we'll be deciding who are our champions for Season 7. In the overall Drivers' Championship, it's either going to be Alex Gall or alternatively Stuart Reynolds in what is a level fight going into the season finale after 3 wins in a row for Stuart Reynolds, balancing out the high performances of Alex Gall earlier in the season. And meanwhile, in the AM Class Championship, it's all turning the way of one name, and that one name is John Bailiff. However, the fight for second is well and truly on between the 3 contenders of Rob Sharp, Chris Jennings and Dennis Van Beelen. So how exactly will it all end? We'll only know then, but until then on Tuesday the 20th of January 2026, we have been at Sim Racing Magazine. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, ladies and gentlemen, remember, like our drivers, to stay on track. Good night.